2, 1.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Convo Couch. It's Fiorella, and we have Jonny on the ones and twos. So Pasta's on his way back from seeing Max Kaiser's live show last night, so he'll be back later on this week.
Yeah, today.
Yeah, next week.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, he'll be back tonight, but we'll be together on Monday, is what I was trying to say. Let's see here. Okay, guys, we have like a really good show today. We have Steve and Kevin Gustola coming in to talk about what's next in the Julian Assange case. And again, the Afghanistan situation has been on everybody's mind, so we're going to go even deeper on that. But I wanted to start off with something that, you know, has really pissed me off, and I'm going to go ahead and start because we don't have a lot of time. Progressives in California, right? They tout themselves as the more leftist of the world. In fact, most people I know, when they think of California, they think of progressives as being California being the most progressive. But what we found out through living here, and I know Jonny can agree with me on this, is that California has the most corrupt and most powerful Democratic Party. We are the 5th largest economy. We have Nancy Pelosi. We have Adam Schiff. We have Dianne Feinstein. We have Gavin Newsom. And Gavin Newsom is, of course, in danger of being recalled. And it's not just because a bunch of right-wing Republicans, which is what the mainstream media narrative, don't like him. It's because he screwed a lot of people that I know in the service industry who personally don't like him, who have voted Democrat their whole lives. It's the reality that he had this whole hypocritical attitude about him, the way Nancy Pelosi also did. And you know, he went into the, what was it, the I forget the name, but it was this French Laundry. It was the restaurant, and he was having, you know, food with people in the middle of the pandemic, no masks, and people got pissed because he closed down their businesses, their whole livelihood. So it was just completely very, very gross and hypocritical, and a lot of people here depend on the hospitality industry as small business owners, etc. So the anger doesn't come from right-wingers only, right? But the narrative that progressives are pushing is that it's a right-wing thing that's led by a bunch of anti-masker, like pro-Trump neo-Nazis, right? That's what they say. And one of the things that was circulating last night, especially, that really got me pissed off is, well, Fiorella, who are you going to vote for? If not Newsom, you need to replace him with someone. If you have no one to replace him, then what? Like, don't vote no. It's like, why? What did he do for you? What did Gavin Newsom do for California? All I've seen him do is pretty much continue giving taking money from the oil industry, continue the attack on civil liberties, and of course do nothing about the epidemic that we have with homelessness and houselessness. So the DSA, instead of actually saying, hey, you know what, withhold your vote from Gavin Newsom, or instead of saying, hey, let's get something in return for giving him your vote, because he needs us right now, right? He needs us right now. He is in danger of being recalled without these votes. If you don't, like, power concedes nothing without demand. If you're not going to demand something in return for a vote, you're a cuck. So DSA said on September 14th, voters will decide whether to recall and remove Gavin Newsom as governor. As socialists, we are no huge fans of Governor Newsom. We'd prefer the option of replacing him with a socialist. With a socialist was on the ballot. They can't even type right. However, this is not the election we're faced with. Instead, we're looking at a fascist, reactionary, and capitalist rebellion against the very belief that this government has any responsibility or right to improve the living conditions of its people. You think Gavin Newsom is going to fix that? He's literally part of the establishment. Newsom getting replaced by a Republican would be deleterious to our mission. It would destroy momentum statewide towards achieving goals like Medicare for All and Green New Deal. Did you get any of that with him in there? He's a progressive. I thought, why isn't he doing that? We recommend that you vote no on the recall, but remain clear-eyed that the future of California will not be decided with one election. The only way towards creating a better California, a better country, and a better world is by building a mass socialist organization.
What?
We need you to join the fight and join DSA. Why?
So what the fuck has DSA been doing? Why don't they have a candidate ready?
Why don't
they have a candidate ready?
Why would I fucking join DSA, pay membership dues, give my time and energy for you to endorse somebody like Gavin Newsom? Because essentially by saying vote no, you're endorsing him. There's a green candidate there. I don't really know much about that green candidate, but I can tell you right now that they're more in line, supposedly, with DSA values than Gavin Newsom. Right? Like, is it like, why is a supposed socialist organization telling people to vote for an establishment to protect an establishment Democrat? Because just so you guys know, if you're not from California, there are two things here. You can vote yes or no on the recall, and that's separate from voting for whoever you want. Right. You don't have to vote for anybody. You could vote nothing. Right. But you can vote on the recall.
Right. Yeah, so there's two questions on the ballot. It's do you want Newsom to be recalled, yes or no? And then you answer that. And then the second question is choose a candidate.
Exactly. So there's two things. So, guys, like, why are they running interference for somebody that didn't give them anything? I mean, you would have thought that progressives would have used some sort of leverage to say, hey, we'll vote for you, but you know, you got to give us something. He didn't give them shit. And I remember speaking to a bunch of activists and progressives that were like, oh no, we're going to get something from Newsom. Yeah, he's going to get us Medicare for all. He's going to get us some money. Fuck, he didn't get anybody anything. And these people are still defending him for nothing. They're giving away their vote for free. So this is what the media framing is. I want to show you guys real quick the media framing. On California recall, Governor Newsom on the attack since the GOP candidate Larry Elder is to the right of Donald Trump. Okay, so they're talking about this guy like he's gonna be some sort of like fascist. That he said he's to the right of Donald Trump, to the right of Donald Trump. That's what's at stake in this election. And don't think for a second you can't do damage in that role. Think about the judges he could appoint. What would he have appointed to who would he have appointed to replace Kamala Harris in the U.S. Senate? How would that impact the trajectory of this country? What would this mean for the future of the Democratic Party and our efforts to keep the House of Representatives, said Newsom. So, I mean, look, and this is gross. Like, it's just, they're continuing to frame this. Look at all the blue checks and all the pundits and all of these people in media and politics. They say, It's Republican nonsense. It is pointless and dangerous. If it passes, California will be run by a lunatic. Everybody who likes California and does not like being governed by lunatics must vote and vote no. Do you see how they vote based on fear? Like, there's no, oh, hey, this guy is offering policy points I like. No, you're not allowed to do that. They do it all the time, these Democrats, but they do it especially when it comes to framing somebody as, you know, the Antichrist on the right. I'm not saying that Gary Elder is like progressive, and he's not, but I'm just simply saying, why are people stuck in this constant state of fear? Oh, a Republican wins. Oh, well. And by the way, a Republican isn't going to win. I predict that Gavin Newsom's going to win, and we're going to talk about why. But California Democrats are the most corrupt, literally. Like, our election system is so awful. Then they continue with the fear-mongering, now with comparing him to DeSantis. I won't get tired of yelling y'all to vote no on the California recall. I don't want us to turn into Florida. It's like the same thing they do with, like, Venezuela. Like we can't be Venezuela, so we can't have Bernie Sanders. Do you see how they do this all the time? It's the same fucking shit. It's fear manipulation. We need to stop giving into that.
In my mind, California is worse than Florida right now.
In my mind, it is too. 100% absolutely agree on that. And I mean, in Florida, people didn't really lose their jobs to that degree. I even spoke to them. I said, hey, how do you like the way they handled the pandemic here versus the way they handled it in like other states where they shut down and people like, you know, are still in unemployment? They were like, oh, I'm glad I kept my job. Like, yeah, like it would have sucked. Like, I mean, I'm not saying that, you know, that lockdowns were never necessary or are never necessary. We can talk about that another time. In the fact is the government didn't provide for people. If they wanted to lock people down, they should have provided. They didn't, especially in a state like California where things are so fucking expensive. And here's the California Democratic Party removing Newsom and replacing him with an untested and unprepared alternative who wouldn't represent the values of most Californians. Would be a disaster. How do you know what the values of most Californians are? You guys haven't done shit. This is the LA Times editorial board. LA Times editorial board urging Californians to vote no on the recall by September 14th. I don't know about you, Johnny, but don't you think it's a conflict of interest that a journalistic outlet, an outlet is actually advocating on behalf of a politician? Shouldn't the media be less biased?
It's just typical of California politics, honestly.
No, it is.
Secretary of State Alex Padilla was endorsing people while he was Secretary of State, the one who runs elections in the Secretary in California. So, yeah, it's just, I mean, it's crazy that people don't make a big deal about it because in other countries, it's a big deal.
Yeah, they would all be like, hey, you're what is this?
It's a conflict of interest.
It's a conflict of interest. We're like, why does nobody even care? That's the LA Times editorial board. That goes to show me that they're not going to report unbiased on issues that are political. They're not. So why would I even care what they have to say? That's not journalism. That's propaganda. And I just wanted to show you guys what the New York Times said something. It like blocked me out. But they just talk about the unconstitutional aspect of the recall. They try to say it's unconstitutional. And it's really not, but they try to say that it is, and that it's another reason why they shouldn't vote for it. People should vote no on it. And of course, it's because they talk about how the process is, how like it's two separate things. And Jesus, like they're saying that by conducting the recall election in this way, Mr. Newsom can receive far more votes than any other candidate, but still be removed from office. Yeah. So that's pretty much what they're focused on. I just think that if the people feel like he didn't do a good job, it's absolutely totally fine that he should be recalled, regardless of whether the progressives or the Democrats have a candidate that they like, right? Like, regardless of all of that, it's just, it's bullshit. And of course, Gavin Newsom got Joe Biden's endorsement a few days ago. On August 12th, Biden made a tweet. And in this tweet, Biden said, you know, Governor Newsom is leading California through unprecedented crisis. He's a key partner in fighting this pandemic and helping build our economy back better. To keep him on the job, registered voters should vote no on the recall by 9/14 and keep California moving forward. So that's all he did, actually. Elizabeth Warren did a whole like video ad with him. I forgot to put it in there, but she did. I don't want to see her face anyway, but she did. So all of the Democratic establishment is coming together to promote Newsom, and you have progressives saying, but do you have a candidate? And it's like, that's not the point. The point is what you withhold your vote unless you get something. And again, like Johnny and I have stated, California elections are fucking corrupt. In fact, if we were to go right now and demand to ask questions about the envelopes and stuff,
I've sent some emails, fam. I'm working on an article. I'm working on an article. I've sent some emails. Let's see what they say, because I didn't know. Did you know that there's a committee? It's a ballot design advisory committee.
No, I didn't know that.
I didn't know that, and they had a meeting that I missed yesterday, and I was pissed about it. But I sent them an email. We'll see what they say, and apparently there's a committee, and I don't know who the members are, and they design ballots. But I assume they also design the envelopes. So I don't know. So I'm gonna ask a couple questions there. You wait for my article, people. And we'll see what happens.
Yeah. So I just wanted to point out this statistic from The Hill that about nearly a new poll conducted by Emerson College for Next Star Media, which operates 6 television stations in the state, found 42% of voters in California would vote to keep Newsom in office, while 38% would vote to recall him. 45% approve of Newsom's handling, while 44% disapprove. California is majority Democrat. That means that Democrats aren't approving of Newsom. Just wanted to freaking show you. 9 in 10 Republicans said they would vote to recall, and 2/3 of Democrats, 66%. So obviously it's not just Republicans. I just wanted to point that out.
And then it says independents narrowly favor replacing Newsom.
Yeah. And independents, again, I think I'm an independent now.
I'm definitely independent.
Yeah. I'm definitely an independent in California. They don't even like have that much data for people like us.
No.
Like, so believe me, people don't like this guy screwed a lot of people who are normally liberals, like non-political liberal, watch mainstream media news liberals. He fucked them. So, anyway, I wanted to point out this man. His name is Kevin De Leon. I've spoke about him on the show before. A long time ago, Pasta and I had a debate where Pasta was actually arguing to give him a chance. And I was like, no. And then it's kind of, then he was like, Pasta didn't like him at all. But he ran against Nancy Pelosi. He ran to replace... not Pelosi. He ran to replace Feinstein. And I always confuse them. Yeah, he ran to replace Feinstein, and he said in this tweet, "Golpe de Estado." That's how a fired up Kevin De Leon, a former state pro tempore and now an LA City Council member speaking in Spanish to East LA audience, defined the current recall attempt against Newsom. In French, it's coup d'etat.
Oh shit.
He's comparing.
He's dog whistling.
A coup, right? He's dog whistling about January 6th, but for me, he's
dog whistling to the Hispanic crowd.
Communities about Maduro and
Venezuela.
It's both because they paint this as a right-wing recall, so they're gonna be like, oh, it's a coup d'insurrection. But also, when he's speaking in Spanish to these people, he knows, oh, golpe de Estado. Like, are you fucking kidding me? And by the way, this guy was one of the people who voted yes on the ordinance that made homelessness illegal, basically making it impossible for people to have tents on sidewalks. That's what he essentially voted for, and he was the progressive darling. I had fights with people over this guy, telling them this guy is no good. He's not going to be a good senator. He's corrupt. He talks out of two sides of his mouth, and here he is once again, unfortunately, proving us all right. Now, the thing I want to get to really quick before we go on to our next subject, and Johnny's going to do an article, as he said, he's doing more investigations onto this particular issue. I'm not one to just grab things off the internet and buy them, but I have a hard time thinking how this can be fake. And we have our envelopes here, so we're going to look into them.
I'm going to test it out.
We just got them. He's going to test it out. But here's this woman, okay? Look, let's just watch the video real quick.
Make sure that you put yes. That means that, yes, you want Gavin Newsom to lose his job. The next thing you're going to check is who you're going to vote for to replace him. I am going to vote for Larry Elder, and his box is on the back of the page. I think that it is important that we unite around one candidate, but like I said, the most important thing is that we get him out. This is the sketchy part. This is the crazy part. So when you fold up your ballot, more than likely, it seems natural, you're just gonna slip this in, but you have to pay attention to these two holes that are in the front of the envelope. You can see if someone from the outside of the mail-in ballot, you can see if somebody has voted yes to recall Newsom. This is very sketchy and irresponsible in my opinion, but this is asking for fraud. So anybody that has access to this mail-in envelope can see who's voted yes, toss it, do whatever they want to it. They can see your vote from the outside of the envelope. So when you're doing this, make sure you line up your ballot on the inside of the envelope so that your vote is not visible. I think that's important. And if you can, share this information. Thanks.
Okay, so you guys saw that. You can see it from the outside. I don't know what to tell you.
We have to verify with our ballots.
We're going to verify with our ballots.
Julie Love says her envelope doesn't have a hole there.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm going to go look at ours and see if that's, like a mistake. There was somebody else too that posted the same thing. Maybe it's not for everybody. Maybe it's random. I don't know. And then there was this other thing on Twitter, the other video where there is like two women. It says 2 women with a post office master key are caught on camera stealing what appears to be California recall election ballots at an apartment complex in Valley Village. Are they just targeting ballots or stealing all mail? What are your thoughts? So it's hard to tell from these videos, right? It's hard to tell. So we're going to do further investigation. We just wanted to show you guys the stuff. Guys, get on over to the Rokfin, Rokfin. It's a cryptocurrency-based platform. We have new members. Max Blumenthal joined with his show Foreign Agents. Ben Norton joined with his show, I think something propaganda. I forget the name. I was just listening to him earlier. And yeah, it's good. Like this is where a lot of people who are doing real work are going because we're not censored. And it's awesome to not be censored and demonetized and all these things. So we need more of you to sign up and follow us. There's a lot of great people to follow. You can endorse one person for $9.99. You can switch that around. You get access to premium content. We have some premium videos out there that Pasta put out. And also you can just literally click on the link now where you don't even have to actually sign up if you don't want to. But I encourage you to sign up. There's crypto to be made as well. So, Johnny, did you send the link?
No, I'm sending it now.
Okay, Johnny's sending the link in the Twitter, so let me read a couple Super Rays. So, Trey Wright, thank you, fam, for always being there. We love you for the Super Ray contribution. Reeve Barker, you're not going to get the pasta from me. So, you're not, Reeve. This is for all the times you do this. But thank you for being a loyal viewer. We love you. Let's see. I see irony. DSA stands for Democrat Simps of Apologetics. I think they're literally Democrats. I mean, especially DSA in LA, I've seen the vast majority of the time they endorse like the faux progressive or like they make excuses. And I started seeing that a few years ago, which is why I, spoke out against DSA and all of that, because I've attended Democratic Party meetings. Like the way they treat these Democrats, like these progressive Bernie wing Democrats, is really freaking gross. And I've attended these things as covering them simply, if there's like a hearing on something like for Jackie Lacey and all of that, like just watching how they treat them. They tell them to shut up and wait their turn to listen. And yet some of these people still think they can change the party, which is baffling to me. It's baffling to me. It's the most corrupt part of the country's Democratic wing, the most powerful, especially because we have the largest economy. We have so much of the resources. So much of what happens in California dictates what happens in the rest of the country. You can talk about New York being the other one as well, but California specifically is ridiculous. Let's see. I think, no offense. Nice to see you. Fucking love you guys. Thank you, Noah. Love you back. And I believe that's it. Oh, somebody said it's always appreciated on the couch. Is that you, Pasta? Yeah, so we're waiting on our guests to come on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Let me see if I have. Okay, got it. A few more minutes, I think they said. So, as Jonny sets that up, I just wanted to, kind of double down on the fact that if progressives don't, like, if they give away their vote, and this is me, like, understanding, look, like, I'm not promoting people vote anymore at this point. Like, I think we need direct action, right? But in a time like this, where you have the opportunity to recall somebody like Gavin Newsom, you withhold your vote for something, right? You shouldn't just give it away for nothing. And just this fear manipulation that these people have let themselves get into with somebody like Gavin Newsom and the things he's letting happen is a little bit crazy to me. It's a little bit ridiculous. Are we good to go?
Yep.
All right, guys. So I'm going to get rid of some of this stuff here. Okay. All right, guys. So, right now we have two great guests. We have a journalist who has been covering the Assange case via the video link and has been doing a great job of reporting very specific things that have gone out during the trial, Kevin Gosztola. And of course, we also have activist and co-host of Slow News Day show, Steve Poikinen. And they are both here, correct? Yep. And okay, great. They're both here and they're going to talk to us about what's happening next in the Julian Assange case, as we just heard the court's approval of the appeal. And thank you guys for coming on today and speaking with us.
Oh yeah, it looks like Kevin's having an audio connection issue at the moment, but hopefully that buffs out. And it is always wonderful to be on the couch.
And you're currently in Denver, right?
I am, yeah. We just wrapped with our first event for the weekend and hit up various media outlets throughout the Denver area and bullhorned in front of them for a while, passed out some flyers, talked to some people, and in general, we created well-mannered frivolity.
Good. Yeah. So Steve, I'll start with you as so Kevin gets the audio situated. You're in Denver right now for Julian. After hearing and reading what happened in the last most recent preliminary appeal hearing, what is your opinion as to how the court justified their decision to reverse the prior decision and permit the U.S. government's appeal?
It's cartoonish. It is. We quite literally weeks before this appeal found out by the admission of the witness himself, Sigurdur Thordarson, that he had fabricated his testimony, that he was recanting his testimony. His testimony makes up a significant portion of the prosecution's argument. It on its face should have dismissed the case, but that's something that we've said surrounding this entire travesty the entire time. There are more "this moment should have dismissed the case" moments than there are the prosecution had a good point there. It's out of hand, and I don't know what it's going to take to get people to cover it accurately, to get people to talk about it to the point to where the necessary amount of pressure is put on people that can actually move the needle about it. We're not going to stop screaming about it. But I mean, this is beyond fallacy, or it's beyond farce at this point.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely agree. It's been a kangaroo court the entire time. And Kevin, are you able to hear us now?
I can hear you, yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate your work that you've done on this. I just wanted you to lay out a few key points made during the recent preliminary appeal as to how they justified their decision.
Yeah, so essentially, it almost seems like the High Court of Justice, this appeals court, basically threw up their hands and said, you know what? It's no use trying to stop the U.S. government. Let's just give them what they want and let them come in to our courtroom and they can argue whatever they would like, and we'll deal with it during the hearing. That's one way to look at it. if you want to believe that this isn't going to actually affect whether Assange is extradited or not. Like, it might be good for Julian Assange in the end, because the High Court of Justice can discredit almost everything that the U.S. has to say. But obviously, you know, that might be, you might accuse me of ignoring some of the good work of people at outfits like Declassified UK with Matt Kennard and others who have examined the conflicts of interests that are in the court system in the United Kingdom, and say that this is just, you know, the UK doing the bidding of the US government. So what we get from this decision is basically saying that facts get to be up for debate, essentially. We are going against the facts that were relied upon, and I can't believe I'm doing this given how disgusted I was with how Vanessa Barretzer handled the case at the district level, but they are taking the facts she relied upon to conclude that Julian Assange has a mental health disorder. You're taking the facts from two reliable doctors, Professor Michael Kopelman, who was the neuropsychiatrist who treated and did his work with Julian Assange from May 2019 all the way to the end of the year, and concluded that he had impulses from his mental health disorder that could feasibly result in suicide, and that those needed to be paid attention by the district judge when deciding whether to extradite him. And so those facts, along with facts about the autism diagnosis that came up during the extradition hearing in September, those facts should be disregarded in favor for the doctors who are on the side of the United States government. Basically, this whole thing of Claire Dobbin, this robot prosecutor, essentially. I mean, I don't know if you've ever gotten to. I don't think anybody who has, only people with access to the feed have got to hear her talk, but she really speaks like a robot. Like she is. She said.
We did get to see her. We saw her enough to make a number of Cruella de Vil references, and we were having some fun with her during the second round, the witness testimony round of that.
You know how like computer devices get programmed and then sometimes they don't actually speak words like people talk them? There's a unit in ADX Florence called the H unit that she will regularly call the H unit. And it just adds, I think, to her robotic, sadistic nature in the courtroom. Is that periodically words will roll off her tongue that makes it sound extra cruel what she is doing to Julian Assange. So yeah, we get this part of the decision. We also get the part where they're going to contest whether, so they're contesting the risk of suicide. But then I suppose what I should really flesh out is this fact that they're turning the concerns for safety that Julian Assange and Stella Morris have for themselves and for their children against them. They're basically saying that Professor Kopelman should be discredited. All of the work that he's done should be thrown out. This is the U.S. position, but now we have the High Court of Justice entertaining it, and they're basically saying, we'll allow the U.S. government to argue that they can discredit all the work of this doctor on the mere fact that he withheld from the court that Julian Assange had a relationship with Stella Morris. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous, and but also I think it's incredible that they aren't more understanding, don't believe that it was fair for the district court, which she was relatively understanding. She said that it was a human choice to not tell the court. She believed that Michael Kopelman had an obligation as a witness to the court to disclose that he knew there was a relationship ongoing between Stella Morris and Julian Assange. But still, she wasn't going to use that to discredit everything he had done for the court to inform her about Julian Assange's mental state. And so again, I mean, I have to emphasize, this is somebody incredibly hostile to Julian Assange,
Right.
who we thought time and time again didn't have his best interests, and yet could see through everything the U.S. was doing and recognize that these doctors were reliable.
This is what is so crazy about this whole process, because back in September, when it was stupid o'clock in the morning in California and it was, whatever time it was in the UK, and Kevin would jump in from time to time on the Action for Assange, live coverage of it. That was when Beretzer had sat there and listened to weeks of testimony about how wonderful the U.S. prison systems were. They were veritable country clubs, and there were color televisions, and there were, arts and crafts and things like that. And she's, just sitting there and hearing this, and at the same time hearing from the prosecution what an absolute shithole Belmarsh prison is, and how much better off Julian Assange is going to be once we get him to the safe confines of ADX Florence. And still, Beretzer was like, yeah, no, I've actually read about U.S. prisons. On that alone, I'm going to deny extradition. But there are these other key points that we'll go over. And the prosecution's argument in a heartbeat switched from, American prisons are wonderful, and we need to get Julian Assange there, to we have to keep him in Belmarsh without bail, because obviously Belmarsh is a much safer place for him, even though we just spent 3 weeks telling you that it was quite literally hell on earth.
Kevin, you got to see Julian. I've heard from other people that had the link that he did not look good. Can you comment a little bit on what you saw? And Steve, you can piggyback off of what he says.
Oh, so yeah, I mean, he looks like anybody who's in prison, basically. He was brought to this room to tune in via video link, and he had all the clothes that you're supposed to wear to court, but he didn't really put them on. Like, he had this collared shirt, and he had a necktie, but he didn't tie it up. And he had these big spectacles. Usually we haven't seen him wearing these big spectacles before. So, I don't know if Julian has contacts or if he's got some kind of problems with his eyesight recently. But anyways, I haven't seen him in these big, huge, they were like thick glasses. I haven't seen him in these before. And it just, it made him look frail. It made him look like somebody who really does need medical. Like, everything that we're hearing from the doctors, it almost like confirmed those opinions that he really does need help. It's all the more reason why it is incredibly humane that he's still in Belmarsh at this moment, because it goes entirely against the decision of the district court to keep him in jail, because if he does have all of these issues, the last place to be receiving treatment would be in a prison. That's just basic common sense right there. So the other thing is, I did see him after the hearing. I wrote about this, that Belmarsh was called up by the court because his defense attorney, Edward Fitzgerald, didn't get to say goodbye to Julian Assange. And so they brought him back to the room, and Julian was there, and his attorney said, "Hey, we're actually not on a private link." By the way, they're sharing. Julian has to share his link with the same journalists who are hostile to him, who think that he's not a journalist. So, anyways, he doesn't even get his own way to connect to the court without having interference from people who despise him. But he's there, and his attorney tells him that, you may not want to talk. It's not really private. And he launches anyways into his reaction to what he just saw with the high court. And he was astonished. I mean, he said, look, he's an expert. Michael Kobelman was an expert. An expert has an obligation to protect the safety of my family. And he couldn't process this idea that somehow Michael Kopelman had done something wrong in refusing to disclose a relationship. Because one thing I didn't get to in talking about this was, and he said this in the court, he said there's a sawed-off gun. Well, he's referring to the fact that David Morales, the UC Global director of this company that was contracted, we believe, by the CIA, had his home raided by police in Spain, and they found 2 weapons, at least, that had the serial numbers erased on them. And he didn't have any ownership licenses for this. This is a man that has ties to the Israeli military, again, working for intelligence people in the United States. What's the plans? Why do you have these like black market guns in your house? What do you want to do with them? Not to mention that, now he's involved in this case against the company. There are people who stalked him. There were UC Global people who were trying to collect his children's diapers so that they could do DNA testing. David Morales was talking about kidnapping and poisoning Julian Assange. You had, we believe it's connected, Baltazar Garzón, who's a really well-known, esteemed lawyer, human rights attorney, had his office burglarized by people. They were wearing balaclavas. We don't know who they were, but again, we think it's associated with these people who are basically spooks for hire. Right. And so all of this is Julian, like, how could you not see that you have to protect me? The court should protect me. There's a privacy case going on, a case in Spain right now, that says that crimes were committed and that you should take seriously. And that's why you should care about all of this. And so anyways, finally he did leave, but we got to hear him try and process the decision that was made by this high court.
Right. Morales too got stopped trying to flee Spain, got stopped at the border at Portugal and was trying to get out of the country. He had a court date coming. And shout out to Max and the Gray Zone for, like, there's an entire UC Global archive on the Gray Zone's website. And they've done, some exhaustive journalism on this. And again, this is another one of those situations where on its face, it's enough to throw out the entire case. But because this is the Five Eyes versus Julian Assange, the normal rules of law, be they, local, UK, US, Ecuadorian, international, they don't matter anymore. There are people inside the court system that are trying to do, I think, maybe the best they can with, within the confines of the actual law. But even they have to know that that's not necessarily what matters here. And that in and of itself, it's the death knell of free press. It's the death knell of activism. People need to get off their ass about this.
Yeah. I mean, with everything that's happening to the encroaching, surveillance state and all of the surrounding narratives around that, it doesn't seem good for journalism in America, as an understatement. But what can we expect in the October hearing now that we know the results of the appeal? And what is the defense likely to focus on?
Well, so I just like to make sure that we're clear here that what the United States government is doing, you mentioned the surveillance state, the prison state is on trial in Julian Assange's extradition case. And what they're essentially going to argue before this high court at the end of October, and what they've been arguing in their submissions to the court, is that they can't guarantee the human rights of Julian Assange. Right. And so you should let us put him on trial. Again, we're going to have to keep him in a jail where we can't guarantee he's going to be treated fairly, but he'll have to just suffer through that. Because then when he's done, after we've convicted him in our show trial under the U.S. Espionage Act with a law that's over 100 years old, that we know was passed and used to go against people engaged in freedom of speech against wars, after we're done, we'll let Australia have him since he's an Australian citizen and he can go live there because we have this treaty, which we didn't tell you about in September, but we've had it all along and we didn't think we were going to have to use it as an excuse to get you to approve this extradition. But by the way, we'll just tell you that we recognize that everything's so brutal and we cannot take care of people who are brought to the United States. We'll let Australia have him. Australia can try to protect his human rights where he's from. It's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. And essentially it means that the U.S. is going to not only be defending the political case against a journalist in this appeal court, but they're also trying to salvage any future they have of extraditing people who have any sorts of physical or mental health ailments. And we know almost every other person on this planet has some kind of thing that they could claim is affecting them, especially after they've been confined to a prison or a jail for a year or 2 years. You're going to develop something that you can use to protect you from being extradited. And so they're going to, the thing that's at risk here is their ability to actually even extradite people to the United States who they've accused of crimes. Like they're at risk of like losing the ability to convince a UK court that they can treat people fair enough in the United States to be put on trial for crimes. That could infect actual like terrorists, by the way. Like, I mean, there's biases that suggest that that won't happen, but like there are people who could be accused of very serious crimes who won't ever be brought to the United States because of this prison system in the United States. Like that's what's going on in this trial. And then of course, you know, back to Julian, obviously what they're going to argue is that we shouldn't care about the things we've heard about how people are treated at Florence, ADX Florence. We shouldn't care about the hellhole within. We shouldn't care about the way that the Justice Department could designate him for special administrative measures. We should take these assurances. You put assurances in major quotes because they are saying things, but they're not actually backed up by any concrete promise. Because within these promises to treat him well and not designate him as like a national security prisoner who has no rights, who can't communicate freely with his family, who will have trouble communicating with his attorney and preparing his defense, within those pledges are major loopholes that suggest that they could get around this at any moment. And so, I mean, I think they're going to be doing a whole lot of lying, which is what they've been doing throughout this entire case. But basically on October 27th, 28th, I think those are the dates, we're going to basically just hear a bunch of lies that the defense aren't going to have a difficult time dismantling because they're not even that developed. I mean, they're not even doing that much work to help get this past the high court.
Steve, do you have anything to add regarding that? And do you think that defense has anything up their sleeve since you've been involved in the Assange defense with the Assange defense team?
They play it so close to the vest that it's almost impossible to know what the defense team is thinking. At least from whatever, I'm not like on the inside of those conversations or anything. So but watching it, observing it, I hate Monday morning quarterbacking a legal team. I really do, because all of the stuff that I would want to yell in the middle of a courtroom is probably like not allowable in the first place. Not that I would be swearing, or just the points that I would raise and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. I don't. I would hope that the defense is going to come into this appeal and simply state all of the reasons why Julian Assange's rights have been violated, and there's no conceivable way that anything resembling a normal judicial trial should go forward. And again, this is why I'm not a lawyer, because I would want to tell the high court up front, like, you know that you're participating in a travesty of justice, right? You know that David Morales was hired by the CIA through Sheldon Adelson at the Sands Casino with the head of his security, who former CIA. Like, it's just from start to finish so unconscionable that I don't know. It almost seems like the trial's a pretense at this point, and that if he winds up back in Australia, again, and I'm rambling a little bit, but I've got a lot of thoughts coming in at once. And Kevin, I want your opinion on this. I don't think the Biden administration wants this on their shoulders. I don't think that President Kamala Harris, 3 months from now, is going to want this on her shoulders. So passing the buck to Australia is probably like their best arguable choice. But what do you think?
I've got a whole rant. I've done it in a couple places, but essentially it goes like this. I don't have a whole lot of respect for Democrats like Biden and Harris. And maybe I'm being redundant here, and I should just say I don't have a lot of respect for Democrats because they're all pretty much this way, but they won't defend what they want to do out in the open.
Right.
So what I mean is you got Mike Pompeo, who clearly advertises what he intends to do. Jeff Sessions advertises exactly what he plans to do. People in the Trump administration tell you without being bashful or being cowardice, they tell you that we do not think Julian Assange is a journalist. He has no First Amendment rights. We are not going to give him human rights. We are going to treat him like shit, and we are going to bring him to the United States, and we are going to put him on trial. We're going to treat him like an enemy of the state. And we aren't going to tell you that what we're doing is wrong. We don't care what it says about the United States that we are doing this. This is what we're going to do because it's about power. And the CIA, by the way, wants this trial. So we're going to do it on their behalf. And they go ahead and do it. But then with the Biden administration, with people like Biden or Antony Blinken, he's the worst. They get asked questions and they don't want to talk about it. Attorney Merrick Garland, totally silent. They want to pretend like this isn't happening. They want us to think that this isn't going on while Biden is in office. And the reason is because they know they can't defend this to the public. Nobody who has asked them a question about Julian Assange in the last year has gotten an answer as to why they're continuing this extradition or why they're doing this prosecution. So that leads me to believe that they're actually, in my view, I think they're worse than Donald Trump because at least those people will defend what they're doing. And then I can attack them based on the merits of what they've said are the justifications for going after Julian Assange. And I can expose them for being filth. But these people are the same kind of garbage, but they won't actually come out in the open and be transparent about it. So what they're doing is they're thinking that if they hide, we won't notice what's going on. But also, I think it's even more sinister because they're going to let this go, in my view, all the way to the Supreme Court, drag this out for 2 or 3 more years. They're going to let this legal limbo continue with Julian Assange. And then, in my view, when it comes time to actually extradite him to the United States, either Joe Biden or Merrick Garland or someone's going to come out and say, you know what, we're going to abandon this case. We're going to drop this. Because to actually bring him to the U.S. would be bad for us. And the reason why it's bad for the United States is I want you to pay attention to all the clips that have come out in the last couple months and all the clips that are coming out in the next year from people who are actually authoritarians or dictators of countries who are trampling on the press freedom of their citizens. And when they get asked questions by BBC correspondents or when they get asked questions by CNN correspondents about why they won't protect journalists in their country, they say, we don't have to listen to you. You don't get to ask me questions about this because you've got Julian Assange jailed in Belmarsh prison and you're trying to put him on trial. So you know what? I don't have to tell you why I don't take care of journalists' rights because you don't protect journalists' rights either. So that's why ultimately they're going to have to abandon this prosecution, because nobody thinks they have any credibility on anything they're talking about with human rights and press freedom so long as this continues.
Do they then pass the buck to the UK, who says, oh, we've got this Official Secrets Act that's been laying around, that we could now open prosecution against Julian Assange for and tie this up in court for another 7-10 years. Ray McGovern, when he wrote his piece immediately after full appeal was granted, was said something that struck me in that the Stratfor email, where it's move him from country to country for 25 years, keep him tied up in the court. Ray observed that move him from court to court is equally as effective, essentially the same thing.
Yeah, but they lost. See, this is why they needed the Swedish case, but the prosecutors couldn't manage it in a manner that had any veneer of fairness and due process. So they lost that as a way to nail Julian Assange. And so, sure, maybe the UK could be the client state that steps up. Maybe it could be Australia. Who knows? Maybe Australia wants to bring, there's been a huge decline in Australia when it comes to protections for whistleblowers. There's a case of David McBride, who's under attack. There's restrictions on journalists. They're raiding the offices of the Australia Broadcasting Corporation, who are doing stories on the military or intelligence agencies. And so maybe his own home country could target him and put him on trial in Australia for the United States' benefit. That's the thing that's really tricky, is after this is all over, he has to find some place he can go and obtain asylum. And so far, the only country and government that has spoken up on his behalf recently is AMLO, the leader of Mexico.
And he just had Commander X extradited back up to Santa Rita. After Kamala Harris was there visiting him, 3 days after Kamala Harris was there visiting.
Which shows you can't count on Mexico to defend you against the United States. They just don't have the power to prevent people from swooping in and taking you.
Did you have a question, Johnny?
Yeah, hey, guys.
Can they hear you?
Yes.
Okay.
I can hear Johnny Buttons.
Hey, guys. Glad to have you on. Since I have both of you all on, I kind of wanted to ask this question about kind of like the timeline, right? So perhaps, Kevin, you can help me with the judicial process, right? And but Steve, help me with the timeline. So Julian Assange was a free, independent, sovereign man. He was the publisher on WikiLeaks, and he published these all these documents. And then he ended up in Ecuador, and then from there is kind of where I'm lost in my timeline. I don't know. I have a black hole there for the timeline.
Go ahead, Steve. It's the embassy. He was in the embassy in UK.
So and he actually had to do some house arrest before that, but in 2010, I think. But so he entered the Ecuadorian embassy in 2012.
Yep.
And then for the next 7.5 years was a resident of the embassy, but also had Ecuadorian citizenship that Rafael Correa had granted him. So on April 11th, 2019, when not just his asylum, but effectively his citizenship was stripped with zero due process, that's when he was trafficked into Belmarsh, where he sits today, almost 2.5 years into it. It'll be 2.5 years in a couple of weeks here.
Why did the UK grab him?
Well, because the embassy was in London.
Okay.
I think that was more a territorial, that's the jurisdiction that's there. In the same way that if, let's say a hot-headed Peruvian, Johnny Buttons, was a Peruvian national, was in the U.S. and was doing some shit, got arrested, he would be held in the U.S. awaiting an extradition trial, awaiting, something like that. So that's essentially what this is. It's just because it's Julian Assange, he's being held in the Guantanamo Bay of the United Kingdom. His initial charge, though, was when they dragged him out of the embassy, was a bail jumping violation, which they gave him the longest serving sentence in the modern era of the UK criminal justice system for jumping bail. He got 50 weeks for that. But so he hasn't been charged with anything since, correct me if I'm wrong about this, Kevin, somewhere around September of 2019. When the bail jumping sentence was effectively up, because it got reduced to like 35 weeks or something like that. So whatever 35 weeks from April 11th is.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. So he served a sentence, and then he was kept in jail. And basically, just so we're clear here, they've always used the fact that Julian Assange saw asylum as a negative thing. It hasn't been like, they basically won't recognize the institution, the United States and the British government, and Ecuador at this moment as well, because they're Moreno has effectively endorsed handling Julian Assange in this manner. So they say that he's a fugitive, and in order to evade justice, he sought asylum in the Ecuador embassy, which, we know how empire works. And for those who are dissidents in China or Russia, if they went to our embassy and fled some political case, we wouldn't call them fugitives. But that's what we're doing with Julian Assange.
Right.
Well, here's the thing. Countries don't grant asylum to people who are known fleeing criminals.
Right.
That's just not how that works.
Well, they shouldn't.
He had to demonstrate that he was being politically persecuted before the government of Ecuador would grant the asylum. Like, there was a process there. It's not like he turned up and said, "Hey, look, the cops are right behind me. Can I walk in for a minute and we can sort it out?" Like, that's not how that works. So,
That's a really good point, Steve, because they did have a press conference, and I think forget who the foreign minister was, but he was there, and they presented the application that Julian Assange submitted with all of his reasons. And there were really good people who were involved in helping Julian put this together, and he got asylum.
Right. So then kind of like the judicial process that he's going through right now, the UK High Court, right? It's obviously the judicial process is a little bit different than the U.S. I had some experience with an election fraud case here in the U.S., so I'm just kind of curious about the process in the UK High Court. So recently, there was an appeal because we all know that the judge barrister denied the extradition. That was the original lawsuit, right? They wanted to extradite Julian Assange to the U.S. so then he can face trial there. So they've made an appeal, which means that they contested the decision from the judge, for those who may not know. And then, so then what's the next step after this?
Yeah, so just so people understand, what the U.S. gets to do, or any country that has an extradition treaty with the U.K. get to do, they go before this high court and they say, okay, we want to appeal this lower court, and these are our 5 or 6 grounds. So it could be like, we think you didn't understand the extradition treaty, or we think the district court didn't understand the extradition treaty. That's actually one of the things that the U.S. is arguing. And, or then like, we actually think he wouldn't have his rights violated if he's transported or if he's extradited to the United States. And so anyways, then the High Court decides if you have grounds to challenge those. It's supposed to be on issues of law. Okay, I don't want to like be a boring scholar lawyer type here, but like, we're not supposed to find the arguments that are happening in court to be that interesting or even that substantial, because they should be about points of law that we don't really know because like we're not attorneys in the United Kingdom. So the fact that we're arguing over the mental health of Julian Assange says that this is corrupted, because they shouldn't be talking about that kind of a thing in the appeal hearing, because that should be settled. That's something that that the judge decided at the lower level. It should not be open for debate in the appeal court. So anyways, they go before, and then the appeal court is going to make a decision based on the grounds that they've granted the U.S., which at this point, what that hearing was at the end of July was the U.S. challenging the fact that there were two grounds that the high court didn't want to allow for debate, basically. And so now everything's open season, and as far as the grounds that they want to appeal. And so again, none of it has to do with journalism, really, honestly. Like the appeal court isn't even arguing about the publication of documents, none of that. All of that is part of the lower court decision, and it doesn't matter because Julian won his case. So the appeal court will make a decision based on what the U.S. has brought before it, and then they're going to appeal to the Supreme Court if they lose, which is, in my view, a distinct possibility. But if for some reason it flips around and Julian Assange loses in the appeal court, then it gets really complicated, because for the folks at home, Julian Assange's defense has a cross appeal that they want to do before the appeal court, but they've been told they have to wait until after the U.S. is done in order to make an attempt to appeal. So it's extraordinarily complicated. And again, while this is all unfolding, a man who is really vulnerable is still sitting in jail and going through all sorts of problems that he shouldn't have to go through. And but if they grant that cross appeal, then that's going to extend the amount of time before there's an appeal at the Supreme Court level in the UK, and then that'll be the last stage for the United States. If they lose before the Supreme Court, then they can't have Julian Assange.
And I know we've talked about the intricacies of the case, but I really wanted to bring it back home with the importance of why Julian is such an important man. On the left here, in politics wise, you get a lot of people who say, oh, he's just one guy. Why do you guys care so much about him? He's just one guy. There's so many people out there experiencing all these hardships, not having healthcare, not having all these things, which is true. However, Julian Assange historically in 2011 said that regarding Afghanistan, and this is so prescient right now, the goal is to use Afghanistan to wash money out of the tax bases of the U.S. and Europe through Afghanistan and back into the hands of a transnational security elite. The goal is endless war, not a successful war. He said this in 2011, right? Shortly before getting taken in. And I think it's important that people understand that he was talking about about Afghanistan at a time where mainstream media was ignoring it. And mainstream media has largely ignored Afghanistan until basically recently. And so, and
now it's a crime that we left. Sorry to interrupt.
No, yeah. So I just wanted you guys to talk about how, he's in prison right now for being a journalist. And that's not being talked about enough as to how right he was about everything.
So Kevin had his rant that he's given a few times, and I have mine on this exact subject that I will try to abbreviate. I was yelling it in the street in Denver earlier this morning. All activism, no matter what it is, no matter from what sphere, hinges on your ability as activists to communicate with people who don't know the message, who may not know enough about the message. The only way that happens is with a free press. If we as activists have no one to communicate to, or we're only speaking to people who already agree with us, that's going absolutely nowhere. And I am addressing every single activist with every single cause right now. This is not specific to me. This is not specific to Action for Assange or any of those organizations. This is all activism. Without a free press, without a free Julian Assange, activism itself can only be approved by the state and for purposes that are going to reinforce the state. That's not activism, that's public relations.
Yeah. And what Julian had to say is very prescient. I mean, Ashraf Ghani, who was the president of Afghanistan, he absconded with like $170 million of the U.S.'s money, and he was looking for a country that would take him. And I guess he couldn't get into Tajikistan, which I didn't think would really care either way if he wanted to come to have safe haven there. But eventually he ended up in the United Arab Emirates, and he's got all this money, like bags and bags of well over $100 million that he stole from the people of Afghanistan. That was supposed to be, if that government was actually anything decent, which we know it wasn't, was supposed to be for rebuilding the country and helping the people there. So he understood, and he was talking about that before they did the Afghanistan papers in the Washington Post. That was primarily from officials in the U.S. government who talked about all the corruption around the slush funds and the money that was just pouring into Afghanistan and going to warlords and going to people with all kinds of conflicts of interest who had their own agendas and really weren't out to help anybody. We hear all this about we were there to save the girls, the Afghani girls and everything. No, sorry. The way that the U.S. was handling the war, it was just about funneling wealth to a bunch of warlords and elites that were in Afghanistan. And that's something that Julian Assange understood. And the Afghan war logs, which he received from Chelsea Manning, were incredibly important. But it's also what you should understand is it's a core part of the way in which the U.S. has fashioned this political case against Julian Assange. The core thing in the U.S. case, it's really amazing to think about this after the week we've been through. The core thing is that he exposed informants and other sources of the United States government to retaliation by the Taliban and other militant groups in Afghanistan by publishing these files. Well, I'm really pleased that our U.S. troops are gone and that we look to be winding down this occupation and it's going to finally be over. But let's just be clear here. Nobody did more to boost the Taliban in the last 20 years than the United States, because everything we've done and all the supposed enemies of the U.S. are in a much better position today than they were before these these Afghanistan war logs were published. And what the U.S. is trying to do is complete the criminalization of journalism. And they've already succeeded in punishing a source. They got Chelsea Manning. They did that. They tried to get a source to testify against the journalist by subpoenaing her and dragging her before a grand jury. And she stood up and resisted and did more than anyone probably could have imagined she would be able to do under those circumstances. She lasted for a year, and then finally they gave up and they let her go. But what they want to do is get Julian Assange so that they not only can use this law to go after sources, but they can also go after the source and the journalist when they want to target national security journalism, when they want to target journalism about this empire. And that is what is crucial, because there are very, very few people who have resources. We know very clearly that those in the media establishment don't want to practice this kind of journalism and take risks, even though they have the resources and the lawyers and the people to protect them from attacks from the U.S. government. So it falls on people like the gray zone and I don't feel like I have enough. I'm not adequately equipped to face the government. So I'm very careful about what I take on. But those outlets that do dare to take on these stories and know that they're going to be clamped down by the very powerful Justice Department and what it's capable of doing with the FBI and the political elites that are going to come for them and demonize them in the media, they're trying to complete a loop here, something that they've been working. This is 15 or 20 years in the making. It goes all the way back to the years right after the September 11th attacks. It goes all the way back to this Afghanistan war. And they've been building this up so that it's almost impossible for people who are outside the media establishment to do journalism with sources who are inside the government and can tell the people of the United States and the world how wars are being prosecuted or how the surveillance state is being engineered.
Exactly. I mean, 100%. I mean, this is all coming to fruition now. Steve, did you have anything else to say before I wrap this up?
If you're anywhere near the Denver area tomorrow, come out and see us at noon. We are going to be at Civic Center Park at the Greek Pavilion there. Bring friends, bring water, and let's see. I do think that there's going to be some in-person events on October 12th when Julian goes back to court. Other than that, I don't think so. Well, thank you, Fee. Great to see you again, Kevin.
Yeah, great to see you. Thank you. Kevin, let us know where we can find you and any other last thoughts.
Well, yeah. So first, thanks. I really appreciated having the conversation. Thanks for letting me rant. So if you wanted to have more coverage of Julian Assange's case, I also do coverage of whistleblowers. It's not about partisan whistleblowers. It's not about like the Democrats' favorite whistleblower or even the Republicans' favorite whistleblowers. It's about whistleblowers who often fall outside of the confines of U.S. politics. And you can go to the dissenter.org, dissenter.org. And it's a free newsletter. Even though there's some exclusive stuff that people pay, but it's a free newsletter. And that's where you can get the dispatches and reports from court that'll be coming in October. And, Mohammed Almazi is a good reporter in the UK, has been helping me do some coverage of this case. So you can look forward to that when we have the next round in Assange's case.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.
All right, see ya.
Bye. Awesome information, awesome interview. I didn't want to talk so much because I wanted to let them talk because they are a wealth of information together on Julian Assange from the activist perspective and the journalist perspective. Kevin does a lot of deep dives on whistleblowers in general, which is something to look into. Shadowproof is his other website that he didn't talk about, but that I know about. And then Steve, of course, is literally doing activism for Julian right now. So it's important to ask those questions. Specifically, I think most of our audience, most of you guys know what's going on with Julian Assange. But, Jonny clarifying those points for people who don't know, it gets kind of tedious, like the whole court process, especially when it's a different country. But the whole point of this is that the United States is trying to exert international jurisdiction over the free press. And again, Julian Assange is Australian, and he's in Belmarsh prison in the UK. He was in Ecuador when we had a favorable president, a favorable leader. And then when there was that whole, Western-backed coup of sorts and ousting, then, of course, Julian Assange completely was vulnerable, and that's why he was taken into, he was in the UK and in the embassy, and that's when he was taken into Belmarsh. And so this whole thing is coming to fruition right now, and what we mentioned the word prescient several times, several of us, because with what's going on with Afghanistan, which is our next subject, it's so important to know the historical context of everything that happened in order to actually have a decent analysis as to why things happen and what comes next. Jonny, did you want to say a couple things? Okay, I'm gonna read a couple of super rays. I think we have a few. Let me see. I have to scroll all the way down. Okay. Jindo, thank you for the Super Ray contribution. Malding Doomdad. I've recently become disabled. Your show is one of the ways I stay sane. Thanks for everything. I'm sorry to hear that. What exactly led to that? Do you have health care? Thank you for supporting us in spite of that. That's, it's terrible. We appreciate all of you guys, all of what you do, even just watching you. I know all of our viewers are working class, so I appreciate all of you. Okay, I think that is it for the Super Rays. Maybe I missed a couple. Arem, thank you for the Super Ray contribution. And thank you, Hunter, for watching. We appreciate you too. So let's get into Afghanistan. This is a great segue into Afghanistan. We were talking about, what Julian said, and we'll play the video actually for you guys to hear it. But so Joe Biden, the Joe Biden administration, in specificity, has actually alleged that they are likely to have targeted airstrikes on the weapons that were the Taliban supposedly seized, according to other sources. But most we know that they were left behind, right? Planes, guns, night vision goggles, the Taliban's new U.S. made war chest. So this is from Reuters. The Taliban had posted, Afghanistan's Ministry of Defense had posted on social media photographs of helicopters arriving in Kabul, delivered by the U.S., and that's going to continue. According to Reuters, the Taliban seized most of the country, right? When they seized everything, they seized many of the weapons and equipment. We've talked about the biometric devices, etc. And so here, this U.S. official says everything that hasn't been destroyed is the Taliban's now. And current and former U.S. officials talk about the concern that there could potentially be weapons used to kill civilians and seized by other militant groups that the United States helped create and funded this whole time. And here, the Joe Biden administration is so concerned about the weapons that it's considering a number of options to pursue. This is towards the bottom, right in front of the Reuters. U.S. troops may stay in Afghanistan. They said the officials said launching airstrikes against the larger equipment, such as helicopters, has not been ruled out, but there is a concern that would antagonize the Taliban. At a time, the United States' main goal is evacuating people. So, yeah. So they're pretty much leaving an open invitation.
So using tax dollars to destroy tax dollars.
Right, using tax dollars to destroy tax dollars. In addition to, they said that they don't have numbers. The current intelligence assessment was that the Taliban are believed to control more than 2,000 armored vehicles, including U.S. Humvees, and up to 40 aircraft potentially, including UH-60 Black Hawks, Scout attack helicopters, and Scan Eagle military drones.
Fam, how is the most technologically advanced military in the world, and supposedly the most imperialist country in the world, right?
Yeah.
Just leave all their weapons of war there.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like this doesn't add up.
Because the United States has given them weapons for a long time. So,
it was done on purpose.
Yeah. So this Michael McCall, he's this representative, said, "We have already seen Taliban fighters armed with U.S.-made weapons they seized from Afghan forces. This poses a significant threat to the United States and our allies." So they talk about the speed here. This happened so fast. No, dude, this happened fast because the United States was losing money at this point. Like, they weren't. A lot of people got rich, right? A lot of specific elite predator class
CEOs
people made
of
a lot
Lockheed.
of money. Yeah. There was mercenaries, there's contractors, and so basically, and they even admit this here, between 2002 and 2017, the United States gave the Afghan military an estimated $28 billion in weaponry, including guns, rockets, night vision goggles, and even small drones for intelligence gathering. Okay, so it's kind of ridiculous that to talk about the Taliban seizing, because this was done with the United States' blessing until they left. And now it's this sort of like, oh, well, it's like a PR, coverage right now. Like, they're trying to cover their bullshit. And so, we're going to get into that more, into how that happened. But basically what's going on right now, just so you guys know, Biden sent like 7,000 troops in Afghanistan, to Afghanistan. We have mercenaries there. The call and the job offers, by the way, for mercenaries is on the rise.
Really?
Their demand. Yes.
Where do I find those?
This
calls?
is
I want to apply.
What the hell?
No, I'm just kidding.
Undercover. So
exactly.
Because now that the and this goes to Kevin's point about how the Democrats are so like, they're fake. They don't blatantly tell you what they're going to do, like the Republicans. That's why in some ways they're worse, I think, too, because it's like Blinken's foreign policy is cryptic. It's just as warmonger type of foreign policy as it is as Pompeo's. It's just more cryptic. They don't tell you what they're going to do. They hide it. And so what they're doing is they're posting calls for mercenaries to go into Afghanistan more, so the public thinks we're 100% out, when it's not the case. We've removed the vast majority of our military, but we still have some soldiers and some mercenaries there. And Joe Biden, instead of, God, it's hard to say with Joe Biden, but he said, this is from RT, so obviously they're not huge fans of Joe Biden, but they said it's taken U.S. President Joe Biden a good 5 days to get over the fact that desperate Afghans fell from U.S. aircraft to escape a situation he had a role in causing. Proof that time's a healer. More on RT. So
in the picture it says, reporter, we've seen Afghans falling from planes. Biden, that was 5 days ago.
Yeah, and then he walks out. So there was,
yeah,
he won't answer that. So during the whole time that this was happening, right, just so you guys know, there was a moment where the Taliban began, quote unquote, seizing all areas of Afghanistan. They quickly took them over, and people started trying to evacuate, trying to flee and leave. And there was this whole debacle that happened where people were hanging on to aircraft, and it was horrible. And you could see like it was a whole chaotic mess. That wasn't like planned. That was them fucking up. That part was them fucking up. And so it looked like a joke. They're like, what the hell are you doing? That was real. Like that was like a complete like just mishandling of the whole thing. And that's what he was commenting on. And he was saying that was 4 days ago, 5 days ago. This is what he told George Stephanopoulos. While people, are hypocritical about Afghanistan, right? Like they're, oh, look at all those people, the refugees, blah, blah, blah. They haven't cared for the last 20 something years, right? But it's true that happened and that it was handled in a completely terrible way. I'm not against removing troops, but the way that was done was so chaotic because the United States really, really did fuck up in it just. And that's something that we can have both, right? We can say it's good to remove troops, and the way that it was done, it was so chaotic, it made the United States look like a bunch of idiots.
So let's watch this clip, yeah?
Yeah.
When you look at what's happened over the last week, was it a failure of intelligence, planning, execution, or judgment?
Look, I don't think it was a failure. Look, it was a simple choice, George. When the Taliban, let me put it another way. When you had the government of Afghanistan, the leader of that government getting in a plane and taking off and going to another country, when you saw the significant collapse of the Afghan troops we had trained, up to 300,000 of them, just leaving their equipment and taking off. That was, that's what happened. That's simply what happened.
But we've all seen the pictures. We've seen those hundreds of people packed into a C-17. We've seen Afghans falling.
That was 4 days ago, 5 days ago.
What did you think when you first saw those pictures?
What I thought was we have to gain control of this. We have to move this more quickly. We have to move in a way in which we can take control of that airport. And we did.
So you don't think this could have been handled, this actually could have been handled better in any way? No mistakes?
No, I don't think it could have been handled in a way we're going to go back in hindsight and look, but the idea that somehow there's a way to have gotten out without chaos ensuing, I don't know how that happens. I don't know how that happened.
So for you, that was always priced into the decision?
Yes.
You want to? Yeah. So he.
Yeah. So I mean, you saw that. I mean.
Yeah.
It's just really bad.
It's bad. This whole thing is bad. I mean, it's good that, like I said, the troops got out, but there's so much. It's not over, is what I'm saying. The strategy has simply shifted, and I want to reiterate that a million times because people are still acting like Biden is some sort of deep state like attacker, like he's attacking the deep state. Look at this whole tweet thread.
Right. There's still people giving him
This
props for this, right?
Like, look at this.
Like Kyle Kulinski.
The media response to Biden on Afghanistan has proved that they dislike Bernie because of his policies. What? They're treating Biden the exact way. So now we're comparing Bernie to Biden. Great. I mean, at this point, you're right. But the way they treat Bernie if he was president and he left Afghanistan. If you cross the establishment, they don't care how many times you serve them. Of course they don't. The establishment is going to be complaining about a war. That's a given. That doesn't mean that Biden is a hero, right? But Kyle, they're just reporting true things that are happening. The issue is a matter of emphasis. There wasn't this hair of fire on fire coverage when we learned that we were funding and arming warlords with child sex slaves, or when we hit record civilian casualties just a few years ago. Of course there wasn't. But we didn't really like do everything that just happened now. That's why they're using that. There wasn't any talk about Afghanistan at all. There wasn't enough pushback from the left when Biden bombed Syria. Where was that pushback? The Afghan papers proved we were lied to for 2 decades, and internally the military was like, what the fuck is the goal? What are we doing? This makes no sense. That was in and out of the news in a day. The Afghan papers did show that. That's exactly what they showed. But how can you say that Joe Biden, who literally voted for the war and who has been for every war and who was everything he has done, including with the AUMF, everything he has done has been pro-war. You're going to say that the architect of the system is now somehow the hero.
So it looks like in these tweets, he's just like kind of talking about how the media reacted, right? So he's saying because the media reacted so negatively to Joe Biden pulling out, that means it's right.
Right,
but that's a naive way of thinking, because they own the media. So they're gonna say, it's like saying that the media would never go against its own narrative to make another narrative, right?
Right.
That they're definitely gonna do that. Like, why wouldn't they do that?
Yeah. I mean,
to make it look like, well, the media is saying that they want more war. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course.
So they'll use it. They'll use the media when they want to promote war.
Yeah.
That's the underlying thing.
Right. And it's also worth pointing out that this was not, it was planned. The United States had planned to leave Afghanistan because they don't have that much of a military type of interest. They have a natural resource interest, which is what we're going to talk about. But it was a planned thing. The United States left those weapons there. They trained and created Al Qaeda and the Taliban. That is common knowledge. We've talked about it multiple times on the show. In the Taliban specifically with Pakistan, that all of this is happening because of the actions of the United States. So you can't really gloat about Biden, and you can't depend your analysis on what the mainstream media does, because the mainstream media does whatever serves their purpose. So that's a given. I want to point out too that Biden's such an idiot that he actually wanted to charge the Americans that were fleeing, the Americans that were stuck in Afghanistan, right? He wanted to charge them money to pay their way out of Afghanistan. This is literally hours after having a press conference where he said the opposite. And he started telling citizens, hey, you're going to have to, you are likely to be charged more than $2,000 to board an evacuation flight out of the country, while the State Department said actually yesterday afternoon that they had no intention of charging people that. And he said all passengers will need to reimburse the United States government for the flight. A promissory note for the full cost of the flight, which may exceed $2,000 per person, must be signed by each adult passenger before boarding, stated the repatriation flight request form on the website of the U.S. Embassy in Kabul. So they're like looking like a bunch of clowns, because how do you expect people that are Americans in Afghanistan to pay $2,000 to be evacuated by an action that they had nothing to do with? It's just so ridiculous. I just wanted to point that out because Joe Biden's is a moron. And it's crazy to me. This issue with Afghanistan is actually complicated because of the fact that people just want it to be very black and white. Like, Biden did a good thing, give him credit. No, like, we were supposed to do this a long fucking time ago. Biden has done the bare minimum, and it's only because now the foreign policy strategy has shifted. Biden didn't do this. Oh, they removed this account. Oh, I get there. It says they removed the account, but I just wanted to read it. Joe Biden voted for the Afghanistan War, the Iraq War, the 2001 AUMF, the DHS Act, and the Patriot Act. Leftists dick riding him for privatizing, not ending, the war are incredibly cringe. Again, 100%. Joe Biden is an architect of the system. Why this need to really, like, you know, make him like some sort of fucking superhero for Marvel? That, I feel like the left has a tendency to do that. Like, they have a tendency to do that. Find some sort of savior for them, right? Like some sort of like, oh, cool, he's based, he's gonna save us, that's great. No, you have to understand why we're here at this point. Like, how did this come about? And I wanted to put Allie's thread, because she really breaks it down here pretty well. Because the Council of Foreign Relations, just so you guys know, it's like the go-to propaganda for the State Department, for NATO, right? And even they said, we succeeded in reducing the threat from Afghanistan to minimal levels. The original rationale for U.S. intervention. And this is right here. There is one seductive argument made by critics of the withdrawal that a Taliban-ruled Afghanistan will again become a haven for terrorist groups threatening the security of the United States. This argument is a backhanded acknowledgement that we succeeded in reducing the threat from Afghanistan to minimal levels. The original rationale for U.S. intervention. The original rationale for U.S. intervention was never about like reducing like a threat of Afghanistan. It wasn't to fight terrorists. We were there for fucking money.
It was against communism too.
We were there, yeah, of course, with you're talking about the USSR and
I'm talking about
on.
When, earlier on.
Yeah.
When Russia invaded.
So we backed, and so we backed the Mujahideen, which were the predecessors to the Taliban. And that this whole thing like wouldn't have happened without us. So they're still pushing this narrative like this was successful and we succeeded in bringing democracy. No, we didn't do that. Fucking millions of people have died as a result of our actions. Millions of people. There was the Taliban at their most extremist point. We supported the Taliban at their most extremist point, where they were throwing acid on women, where they were putting people's heads on a pike and throwing them around like soccer balls. We were supporting the Taliban then. Where was Joe Biden then? Where were any of these Democrats? They were supporting the effort, including Bernie Sanders. He supported the war in Afghanistan. And look at what they say. We all lost Afghanistan. 2 decades of mistakes, misjudgments, and collective failure. This was just a few days ago. But they still run narrative management, and you guys can read it. But again, this is what Ali points out. Foreign Affairs is the PR magazine for the Council on Foreign Relations. They provide opposing views, but it's really just a flip book for the NATO crowd to showcase their multifaceted foreign policy initiatives and offer a reflection of their failures in doublespeak. So in essence, they pretty much out themselves with their writing while trying to, PR approve themselves. So they said perhaps the resurgence of a terrorist threat will develop more quickly under a future Taliban government than it would have otherwise. But to conclude that this outcome demands an indefinite U.S. troop presence would imply that U.S. troops should also be deployed indefinitely in many of the other parts of the world where the Islamic State, also known as ISIS, and Al-Qaeda offshoots are active in greater numbers than they are in Afghanistan and pose a greater threat to the United States. Moreover, U.S. capabilities to monitor and strike at terrorist groups have grown exponentially since 2001. Yeah. So has the power of these groups because we have created them, and now they have all the capabilities. They have all of these weapons, and that is by design. And they, and again, they're telling you that they're going to shift their focus because they're saying, well, if we take out our troops and, then there could be offshoots and blah, blah, blah. Like they tell you what they're going to do. And this is really critical right now because Anthony Blinken is the type of guy that is going to take this and go, run off with it because this is what they're saying. And, God, I can't even read more of their crap because it's so, but that's a good thread by Ali trying to juxtapose pretty much, show you that they pretty much out themselves in what they say when they're trying to defend themselves. And we've already began planting the seed for intervention in Afghanistan, right? And like I said, this isn't about really 100% removing any sort of access. Like I said, we have troops, we have mercenaries, and if there's a vested interest in the region, which all of it has to go back to the Belt and Silk Road, where you're going to have China and Iran and Russia, of course, play a part into that. But the Taliban are sitting on $1 trillion worth of minerals the world desperately needs. And the world needs these minerals or the United States? Let's be clear. Let's be clear. The title should say the Taliban are sitting on a $1 trillion worth of minerals the United States wants. Right? That's what this is about. The fourth industrial revolution. We've talked about it on this show. Basically, now we go to mining resources, taking natural resources from the global south and using them to create technology in the West. And that's pretty much what we're doing. And here they say the swift fall of Afghanistan to Taliban fighters has triggered a humanitarian crisis. Ooh, those key words. And thousands trying to flee the country. It's also brought renewed focus on Afghanistan's vast untapped mineral wealth, resources that could transform its economic prospects if ever developed. We don't care about Afghanistan's economic prospects. We care about using those resources for our benefit. Okay. In 2010, U.S. military officials and geologists revealed that the country, which lies in the crossroads of Central and South Asia, was sitting on mineral deposits worth nearly $1 trillion. Supplies of minerals like copper, iron, gold are scattered across provinces. These are the same minerals that are in countries like Bolivia and Peru. There are also rare earth minerals, perhaps most importantly, lithium. Aha, lithium. What could the United States possibly do with lithium? Do you not see, like what we've been talking about here, the fourth industrial revolution? The United States has shifted its strategy now. They're not making as much money as they were before with the whole historic, the poppy fields that were brought here to create the opioid crisis, which, by the way, similarly reflects what we did in Central America with cocaine. We had a bunch of extra cocaine the CIA had. What did they do? They brought it to countries, to this country in particular. They brought it to California. They brought it to the urban areas, and we had a huge cocaine addiction in the 80s. Like this, we do this all the time. So it was with cocaine, then it was with the opioids, and now this is a fourth industrial revolution. Lithium, rare earth minerals, etc. So this is, again, not, the United States is leaving the door open for a type of foreign policy that's going to be extremely cryptic and extremely still go after, occupy places like Afghanistan, but not so focus on on the outward military presence, but just on a more cryptic type of military presence. And again, Afghanistan should be a rich nation, right? It should be, with all those resources. But look what the United States, the West, and their NATO-backed allies did to that country. Just so you guys know, the United States has also frozen nearly $9.5 billion in the Afghanistan central bank assets. This was done, I think this was published on Tuesday, confirmed on Tuesday, and that this is going to remain on the Treasury Department sanctions designation list. So again, if the United States really wanted to help the lives of people in Afghanistan and really cared about the women in Afghanistan, they wouldn't be freezing their assets. Like they aren't going to do that. So what are the Taliban going to do? Even if you have a government, even if you have people that were working with the United States, right? And the minute the United States left, do you think those people all of them are just going to be loyal to the United States? Why? They have no reason to. The United States is majorly gone. They have mercenaries. They have people there. But at the same time, the Taliban has already, as far as we know, has actually said that they're going to try to be reasonable, that they're not going to go around and be cutting people's heads off. They've told the people as much that they're going to, forgive anybody that was working with the United States. Because a lot of them were, a lot of people in the Taliban were. And so they're not going to attack people or, cut people's heads off or do any of that stuff. They've already said as much. But you can consider that they might see ways in making deals with China. China isn't going to do them dirty the way the United States did. I mean, as far as they know. And so that's what we're looking at too in terms of foreign policy. And the sanctions on the Taliban means that these people cannot access any funds. And this is going to, of course, always go down to the working class. It's always eventually going to go after the working class. And the Afghan ambassador that was pretty much let everybody know that Ghani stole millions. Ghani was the previous leader of Afghanistan, right? The president of Afghanistan. And he literally left. And we talked about this earlier with Kevin. He mentioned this. He left with $170 million from the country and now wants protection. This is why he's calling on international authorities, right? And,
The ambassador is calling for the arrest, international authorities to arrest the Afghan president. Yeah.
Right. No, the ambassador wants the arrest because he fled. Ghani fled with $170 million worth of money, and they didn't. He left quietly during this whole thing as everything was happening. That's the Taliban were entering the city of Kabul, and apparently he's denied taking that much money since. And he also said in a post that he fled to prevent clashes with the insurgent group and avoid bloodshed. Ghani isn't a very credible person. He's now in the UAE, United Arab Emirates. That's where he's at right now. And the people in Afghanistan view this as a betrayal. They think like he shouldn't have left. And, he's requesting Interpol. The ambassador is now requesting Interpol to arrest him. So that's what's happening. And he somehow made it that if he stayed, he would have been like killed. But there's a lot of Afghan people trying to leave America. That's why you've seen the push from people like Ilhan Omar to say we need to accept refugees and we need to
leave to America, right?
From Afghanistan into America.
Yeah.
And that's why you've seen the push from Ilhan Omar and others to accept refugees, etc. But again, while we should, it's obviously political manipulation when they do this, because this is like they haven't talked about Afghanistan this whole time, like at all, right? And so the Pentagon is, ramping up their efforts to get people out of Kabul. And that's what's going on so far with that. And I wanted to point out that there was this backstory, how that the United States worked with the Taliban, and how this whole removal of troops has been in talk forever, was that you have the son of the slain Afghan hero Masood, who is now vowing for resistance against the Taliban and seeking support from the United States. So this guy, he is the son of Ahmed Shah Massoud. He was one of the main leaders of the Afghanistan's anti-Soviet resistance in the 1980s. And so this guy has pledged to hold out against the Taliban from his home area in the Panjshir Valley. And this is the kid, right, who was literally, he was educated in American schools. He is pretty much an asset.
You tell me he's like a Guaido?
Yeah, I would compare him to Guaido. I can read some of that, Johnny. The Washington Post editorial, in Washington Post editorial, Ahmed Massoud, the 32-year-old son of the former Mujahideen commander, said members of the Afghan military, including some from the elite Special Forces unit, had rallied to his cause, and he appealed to the West for help. He said, "We have stores of ammunition and arms that we have patiently collected since my father's time, because we knew this day might come. If the Taliban warlords launch an assault, they will of course face staunch resistance from us." So again, God, this follows a declaration by Amrullah Saleh, one of Ahmad Shah Massoud's closest aides, who later became vice president, that he was the rightful president of Afghanistan after Ashraf Ghani fled Kabul as Taliban insurgents seized the capital on Sunday. Again, note that one of the closest aides became vice president, and he said he's the rightful president because Ghani fled. This guy was a close friend to this kid's father, who was the one of the leaders of the Mujahideen. The Mujahideen were the precursor to the Taliban. They were the ones that led to the radicalization of these extremist groups in coalition with the United States. This, to me, just clearly indicates that there's going to be an attempt to continue a U.S. a fight between U.S. interests that are pro-Western interests in Afghanistan versus the members who want to work more with China and Iran and Russia. That's what we see going on here. And of course, the Fourth Industrial Revolution is going to play a part in that, as to who gets what, these minerals. This is what the wars are going to be fought on. It's the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And as we already saw, you guys, we pointed this out with Kevin and Steve. Assange on Afghanistan is important. I wanted to have you guys view what he said, because I think it just all ties together. This is Julian Assange speaking in 2011, and let's hear him once more.
Because the goal is not to completely subjugate Afghanistan. The goal is to use Afghanistan to wash money out of the tax bases of the United States, out of the tax bases of European countries, through Afghanistan and back into the hands of a transnational security elite. That is the goal, i.e. the goal is to have an endless war, not a successful war.
Right. And from the Afghan papers, right? They we don't know what we're doing. We don't know what's going on. We don't think this is winnable. It wasn't winnable. There's no winning. It's just the point was to make money. We've talked about the trucks and the convoys and how Americans, as security interests, paid radicals, the Taliban, to let them push their trucks through to guard these poppy fields. That's been ongoing for years and years and years. And he says it right there. A lot of people made money, right? Into the hands of a transnational security elite, meaning not just Americans, but NATO-backed countries. A lot of people made a lot of money, millions and millions and millions of dollars. And it gets to the point where you can't look at this and say, oh, well, Biden's great because he did this. No, this doesn't end with what Biden has done. This is just a shifting of strategy, a shifting of what the United States now sees where they're going, and they've wasted too much money. I also wanted to show this other tweet from Misty that WikiLeaks, of course, has been on the money when it comes to what the CIA and, of course, the national security strategy is. On March 26 in 2010, WikiLeaks released the PR strategy the CIA had for ensuring popular support for the occupation of Afghanistan in France and Germany. In France, the plan was to use sympathy for refugees and women. Sound familiar? Thank you, Julian. This was back in 2010. Back in 2010 when this happened. And you can see it if you click on the link, the WikiLeaks report. You can see it. It says release date March 26, 2010. The classified CIA analysis from March outlines possible PR strategies to shore up public support in Germany and France for a continued war in Afghanistan. After the Dutch government fell on the issue of Dutch troops in Afghanistan last month, the CIA became worried that similar events could happen in countries that post the third and largest fourth troop contingents to the ISAF mission. The proposed PR strategies focus on pressure points that have been identified with these countries. For France, it is the sympathy of the public for the Afghan refugees and women. For Germany, it is the fear of consequences of defeat, drugs, more refugees, terrorism, as well as for Germany's standing in NATO. The memo is a recipe for the targeted manipulation of public opinion in two NATO ally countries, written by the CIA. It is classified as confidential / no foreign nationals. So this is happening again. I mean, this is the whole, they do the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, Julian Assange exposed their PR narrative. I mean, this is their strategy.
They're using it again.
The CIA, the government, when they decide to go to war, they have a strategy for how they're going to sell the war.
Justify it. Mm-hmm.
How they're going to justify it and sell it to everybody. Mm-hmm. So there you go. And we wouldn't have that if it wasn't for the good people at WikiLeaks and Julian Assange.
Who's in prison right now.
Who's in prison suffering for over a decade now.
Yeah, and they can't even get him on the journalist aspect. Like that's what Kevin was saying. They're not discussing that. They're discussing bullshit. Oh, they didn't tell us about his relationship with Stella Morris. What? What does that have to do with anything? It's a joke. It's a joke what's happening. It's a joke. It's a dark, nasty joke. And I brought this up too because I wanted to point out there have been several tweets by several people in NATO, like in France. They've been attacking Biden, right? You can both think Biden's an idiot while at the same time talk about the hypocrisy of France and these NATO countries advocating to stay and occupy Afghanistan because, this was just so horrible what's happening. It's like they were involved. Their hands are not clean. They were absolutely 100% involved in this whole thing, and they can't just back off now. I mean, those are our allies. They're just as bad. They just don't have the massive power and military that we have. Now we are actually losing ground when it comes to military technology. Russia and China are actually are growing their technology, whereas we're not, and that's something that a lot of people haven't talked about yet. So guys, just more and more stuff in Afghanistan. I definitely want to do a deep dive onto the Afghan papers because those were a big deal. And there's so much information in that, but I just wanted to bring up an update as to what's happening now. Okay,
so fam, I suggest we skip the next segment, do that for the next show, and just go into the news because it's been a 2-hour show already.
Yep.
So let's there's some things I got to point out in that section too that I want to point out to you. Okay. So in the news, everybody, how you doing? Do we have any Super Rays?
Yeah, I think I missed a. Did I miss one? Jindo, thank you for the Super Ray contribution. John Kemper, thank you for the Super Ray contribution. It is always appreciated on the couch. Roar Media, since Pasta is on a walkabout, is it a good time to audition for a seat on the couch? Love y'all. Yes, but you must wear overalls because that would change the dynamic. You have to, Pasta has his whole pasta-ness, but you have the whole overalls thing. So we love you, Oz. Thank you so much for joining in.
Shout out to Oz.
And Roar
Media. So in the news, guys, there's just some things I've seen in the Twitter sphere and on social media and everything. So Ben Norton, last night, the Israeli apartheid regime just launched attacks yet again on Syria. I saw Ben's tweet and I saw a post on Instagram by Richard Medhurst. Violating Lebanon's sovereign airspace in the process, Israel has bombed Syria hundreds of times in recent years, but never faces consequences because it's protected by the U.S. empire. So Israel's bombing Syria again. So that's happened, and that happened last night. It's continuing on. It's disgusting. Also in the news, Danny DeVito abruptly lost his Twitter verification following a tweet he made in support of the Nabisco workers during a strike. And it was interesting that happened because it totally happened. He's got it again now since last night. Last night it came back on. But this is the tweet in question. It says, support Nabisco workers striking for humane working hours, fair pay, outsourcing jobs, no contracts, no snacks. It's got 150,000 likes. Danny DeVito's pretty popular. But it looks like he magically got their blue check back after, I guess, a lot of people made a shitstorm about it, right?
Yeah.
Did you hear about that, fam?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, he got it back. So, I mean, but
it's interesting that he got taken away,
Yeah.
Like, if you support workers, big tech is going to come in and, like, take away your credibility. You know what I'm saying? So that's weird.
It's not, happened. Yeah, I mean, it's the whole that they have on actors and entertainers, singers, everybody that's in Hollywood. Like, you won't get an agent if you don't play ball. Like, a good agent, you won't. It's hard to be successful now more than ever. That's why people play ball.
Right. So props to Danny DeVito for making a tweet like in support. Taking the ball, having the balls to make a tweet like that, right?
Mm-hmm. When
you're in a position when it could affect your livelihood, right? And the fact that this is even a thing in the supposed democracy of the United States is a big indicator of where we are right now, the path we are following in this empire. So I saw a tweet on Twitter, and the fam asked me not to say who it was. So I saw a tweet by a fam on Twitter, and I didn't know about this article that came out in 2018 about progressive House Dems pushing for a vote on Medicare for All, the bill. So Pramila Jayapal, a top progressive Democrat in the House, and again, this is from 2018, November 2018, called for hearings and a vote on Medicare for All legislation now that her party has taken back the House. And this is back in 2018. We're going to be pushing for it to get a hearing, to have this debate on the floor. And Jayapal said in an organizing call with National Nurses United Union on Tuesday, Jayapal said it is not enough for Democrat. This is the kicker right here. In 2018, Jayapal said it is not enough for Democrats to just say they are co-sponsors of Medicare for All. Now that Democrats have won back the House, she said, when we have the majority, we need to make sure that we put it to use. So that's hilarious that this is what they were saying in 2018. This is what Jayapal was saying in 2018. And so we all know in now, fast forward 3 years into the future, 2021, the shittiest year ever, Jayapal also made a comment on force to vote when Jimmy, as you all know, Jimmy was pushing for force to vote, for the squad to leverage their vote for Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House, and to leverage that power that they have, and bring Medicare for All to the floor to vote, and for the same reason that Jayapal just said. So here's a clip that Jackson Hinkle, and when he had Jimmy on, when he responds to Jayapal's rebuke of force to vote.
There was a video that just recently resurfaced. Pramila Jayapal was on, I think it was on Marianne Williamson's show.
What a joke of a fucking, what a joke.
Yeah, this is what she had to say about force the vote.
These are the pieces of work that have to happen. If somebody wants to call for us to force a vote on Medicare for All, I am happy to tell you why I think that's a bad idea. It will end our movement.
Yeah, that was the one where she said it would end our
I just like to ask you, how's that movement doing? What's the ETA on that vote for Medicare for All? You see, such a transparent bullshitter, and I just want to say I appreciate Marianne Williamson bringing that up. So thank you for bringing that up, Marianne Williamson, because no one else will bring that up. So I want to say props to her. So thank you very much for bringing it up. You know, Ryan Grimm will do an interview with the same person and never bring that shit up and never push back. It just, what a sad sack fucking Ryan Grimm turned out to be.
Yeah.
So really, I just wanted to get the clip of Jayapal in there and a little bit of Jimmy's reaction, but it's crazy how she said doing that would bring an end to the movement when back in 2018 that this article was shared from, she was literally advocating for the exact same thing that Jimmy was advocating for force to vote. I just wanted to show the hypocrisy there. And I didn't know about the article when the whole force to vote thing was going on, right? Yeah. So I just wanted to bring it up. Your thoughts on that?
Jayapal versus Jayapal. That's, I mean,
yeah.
That's, you can find politicians contradicting what they said before years later because they're politicians. And this is why you can't reform that. What do you like? They're gonna tell you what you want to hear, and then they're gonna say no, that when it's not politically expedient to do so. And now, like they have both houses. What the fuck are they doing? They're gonna lose so bad, and I can't. I can't wait. Fuck it.
Yeah, so that was just crazy that even happened. So then I just have some tweets that I liked. I'm gonna go over real quick. I saw Michael Kofi online. He said, Dr. Bobby has a message, just meme. It says, under capitalism, food isn't produced to feed people. It's produced to make a profit. When it's not profitable to feed people, we let them starve. Even when our labor has conquered scarcity, capitalism must manufacture it in order to justify its existence. So it's pretty crazy that...
It's a guy from...
Yeah, it's...
American... No, it's...
No, what is it? The Hill.
The
Hank Hill or whatever.
Yeah.
The Hill.
Not the Hill, but yeah.
But no. So yeah,
it's
restaurants.
American Dad, right?
Restaurants.
American Dad?
No,
yeah.
It's not American Dad.
No.
Restaurants throw out food all the time. Grocery stores throw out food all the time.
Yeah.
We're not allowed to plant, have community gardens.
You can, but it's rare.
I don't see it. We're not allowed to collect rainwater, etc. You know what I'm saying? So that's a thing. I saw this tweet that I thought was really funny. It says, motherfuckers talk about Taliban's oppression of women but support the Democratic Party. So I like that. Because the Democratic Party has been...
I mean, look at who's been president in the last couple times. And then you got Biden, you got Trump,
then you got Cuomo.
Cuomo.
I'm not perverted, I'm Italian.
Where's pasta when you need him? Hey. Don't talk shit about Italians.
All right. So then there's this other thing I saw online that was pretty disgusting. I don't know if y'all saw this or not. This is in L.A., of course. So Kenneth Mejia actually tweeted this. He says, look at all the good cops in the LAPD stopping this bad cop and the LAPD from punching someone who is restrained. This is what $3.1 billion gets us. That's how much money is spent on the police here in LA. $3.1 billion. And so there was a kid. He's restrained on a gurney. and he said some shit to the cop, free speech, and the cop comes and punches him.
Well, we know free speech doesn't really exist here, like the way they frame it.
Bitch!
I call him a bitch.
Don't do that shit again. Any officer.
He's fucking restrained. This isn't about him being. You see when they talk about safety,
Look,
when they say I was fearing for my life.
Yeah,
it's not about that.
It's not about that. It's about power. It's
Yeah.
about the power and the authority that they have. And you can see like he's fucking like choking him here. He was choking him. And these are like the paramedics that was kind of like pushing him off. These cops were just kind of sitting there doing nothing. Watch these cops.
Don't do that shit again. Any officer.
It took the guy with the glasses to come through and pull him back. But yeah, as you see, that's the LAPD, most democratic fucking county in America, right?
Yeah.
Well, actually, it's very representative of what the Democratic Party is, right?
Yeah.
So there you go. There's that. And then, so that's why, we're like for defund the police as a policy position. And someone made this tweet. It's good, actually, to defund the police. It says defund the police, the counter argument. How is he supposed to carry all that? Defund the police, right? So it's gang violence, drug possession, drug dealers, homelessness, school security, prostitution. That should be, sex work legal. Theft, sex work is work. Domestic violence, every unexpected crisis, keep the peace, right? So these are all the issues that they people say that the police deal with, right? But then, like, what an ideal situation would be is this. You have universal health care up here. You have drug treatment programs, mental health services. You have social workers, education, job placement, decriminalize and regulate pot and sex work, and affordable housing for people so they're not homeless. And then, all he does to do is keep the pieces. But I don't know. We can debate about, having the current police force, if they could, the staff right now, if they, the way they've been indoctrinated
they look for people who,
like you just saw, like, is that reformable?
Like that.
Is that reformable? Is this, you know what I'm saying? Like,
it's systemic. There may be individual people who are not like that.
Right.
But it's systemic. It's part of the system. So they're pushed to protect that kind of behavior. So you can't just remove a few bad apples and think it's going to fix itself, because it's systemic. It's, again, with anything, you have to go to the root of the problem. You can't just, like, take from the top of the tree. You got to get the whole fucking root. That's why, whether you call it defund the police or you call it whatever the hell you want to call it, it doesn't matter. It's the whole thing needs to be redone. The whole thing. But again, that's never going to happen, Johnny, in a system where the people in power need police to protect them.
And their property.
And property. Like, it's all about property in the system. So
in the capitalist system, yes. I saw this. Okay, so
oh God.
Yeah, I had to play it, fam.
Oh God, why?
No, it's hilarious. What are you talking about? Oh, it's hilarious because he just exposes himself.
Fuck?
Like, this is just so hilarious, and I can't. It's just too much for me. Hold on. All right, we're gonna play this. Vosh saying that the U.S. leaving Afghanistan wasn't a good idea, and that it was relatively small and relatively cheap.
Now, I want to be clear about this. The thing that's frustrated me is that a lot of people on the left pretend that us pulling out of Afghanistan would be a good thing. Like, that the Afghan people are, like, just waiting to yearn and breathe free to remove the American occupation. Make no mistake, the American occupation was relatively small and relatively cheap, all things considered. Now,
trillions of dollars, dude. Trillions of dollars. Like, really, that's the cost. Trillions in the T. Trillions of dollars. You can argue about how it's done. But we shouldn't. Why do we have jurisdiction over what Afghan people want? Why is that even, like, relevant? we shouldn't have been there in the fucking first place at all. That's the whole fucking point. We radicalized and created terrorists who then we said, oh, we have to get rid of. Since the 70s, this has been happening, by the way.
They created
since the 70s, since the involvement.
First, they created an anti-communist...
the Mujahideen.
And then they created the enemy to stay in there to justify the occupation.
To take out the socialist government.
Yes.
Supported by the USSR. Like, this has always been about counteracting the other side, and like that's the whole point. And it was extremely expensive and extremely destructive. We wouldn't have all these dead Afghan people that we saw back in the day, and all these people getting their heads chopped off, and all the stuff that we saw, had we not had our involvement, had we not gotten ourselves involved in this. And to say he's just so fucking stupid. The fact that this guy has hundreds of thousands of people who believe him, and it's a lot of really young people, impressionable people. It's just like, to me, it's like, why? He's dumb. He doesn't know what he's talking about when it comes to theory or Marxism. He doesn't know what it's talking about when it comes to foreign policy. Sure as hell doesn't. I mean, any idiot could make him look like a moron. And like, he doesn't debate. He literally just like tries to like hold gotchas, and his little minions I can't stand it.
Yeah, no, it's terrible. I don't know how anybody watches that. So here's another thing I saw. I'm gonna read the little tweet first. Eco activist and water protector Jessica Resniak reported to federal prison yesterday. She will likely be in COVID quarantine for at least 2 weeks. So shoot her a note. Jessica got 8 years for sabotage of the Dakota Access Pipeline in 2017. And she's charged with terrorism for protecting water. So
yep.
I didn't even know about this. I almost want to do more research on this, because even right now there's groups that are trying to stop the building of pipelines right now.
Yeah.
That is happening in I think in the Dakota somewhere.
Yeah, Steve Goot is actually there, and I want to have him on the show.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, he's there.
Oh, for sure.
It's a three-way pipeline or something like that. Yeah, there's that's been happening. We actually did mention this, that she was found guilty. That she was found guilty, but now she's actually going into prison. Again, this is why Julian Assange is important.
First they came for the protesters, fam. Hold on. I'm going to show a video later. All right. Other thing in the news, 74 people in Martha's Vineyard have tested positive for COVID. This is the kind of old news since Obama's 60th birthday bash. So
that's hilarious.
They're not listening to their own shit that they require for the general public. Again, for us plebs, there's different rules, and but the consequences looks like the same though. I saw this also real quick. Just a guy, he said, donating to mutual aid groups is infinitely more useful than donating to a Democrat. And I know you were talking about this with
Unapologetic.
With Unapologetic.
Dontel.
We were talking about this with Dontel. And yeah,
I mean, I mentioned it with Sabby
it's
Sabs too.
It's such a good idea. So we need to get this statement out there. You know what I'm saying? Like, stop donating to politicians. You know what's hilarious is I was actually looking at our FEC records last night. I was looking at mine, and the last politician I donated to was Lauren Ashcraft and Angelica Duenas, and before that Tulsi Gabbard, and before that Bernie. But yeah, I mean it's been it's an awakening that's happening right now. We need to fund mutual aid, right? Then you can have general strikes. You fund the people, you can have general strikes. But the whole where the money goes,
we're working
is a problem,
ass backwards, right? Is what we're doing.
Yeah, I know.
And these people want.
And then there's the people who are Democrats who are like, but we have to do electoral politics, like Jen Perlman, who is advocating for that instead of.
She finally unfollowed me.
Instead of listening to.
By the way, drama. In case you guys don't know, Jen Perlman unfollowed me. I actually haven't. I've been going after her, but very civilly. I've never been, yeah. But yeah,
You know what's hilarious is that we went and covered her fucking election.
I know.
And
she was like thanking
we did a whole trip.
Jordan Chariton, while us and Niko, who she wasn't fond of, by the way,
went and did. I did a whole piece.
Yeah.
I edited video for her campaign.
Yep.
We're like, okay, you're the one going against DWS. We interviewed her. You know, we did this whole thing. We went to the fucking polling, the voting centers there in Florida, where me and Pasa got kicked out, and for trying to just observe their counting
which
process,
was legal.
And then they said they got a phone call from Debbie Wasserman Schultz to kick us out, and then they kicked us out. And then so we even tried to do that, but then we didn't have any support from Jen or the campaign, except for Glory Jones, who helped her campaign. And then so yeah, I don't know. It's just.
And
so
Glory
yeah,
Jones found shit.
We tried your electoral way. You didn't contest the elections.
Nope.
You
If you
didn't
don't contest the elections, you're like, I'm wasting my time with you. Lena could have.
If you won't even talk about it.
She didn't.
She won't even talk. Glory brought it up to her. She wouldn't even talk about it.
No.
So along the lines of this mutual aid thing, I saw this whole thread about mutual aid is creating a community and network so that we don't need capitalism, which is what fucking Fred Hampton was doing. And it can be revolutionary. I mean, it's more than a $5 monthly donation. It's more than just a donation. It's working as a community, right? It's building that community. This is what I've been talking about. I see a utopia in my mindset when I've thought about utopia back before and all the time now. It's my mind is like goes to the most important thing is building a community where everybody can be involved in some way, where everybody feels involved in some way, right? And so I like that this tweets were
communism.
Exactly. We could just talk about it and not even give it a label.
Yeah.
And then we can have people that will join us.
Yeah.
And then, because as soon as you say it's communism, the independents and people who have been propagandized will be like, the red flags go up in their mind.
The literal red flags.
Literal red flags.
The one upstairs.
Yeah. So, and then this person was also saying it should have many aspects to it, from food to defense, which is exactly right. It isn't charity, right? It's building a community, from food to defense.
That's why I like the ronderos in Peru and Castillos, because that's what they do.
Right. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of things get thrown to as mutual aid that's more like charity, so people don't want to take it as seriously.
Yeah.
Mutual aid is community building, and I'm so down with what this person is saying. Also, when people trust you and you trust them, it's easier to educate each other. I would get much further radicalizing someone who knows me and trusts me than some jerk off online. Crowdfunding is an aspect of mutual aid, but I don't consider it mutual aid. I consider it a band-aid. Band-aids are important, but if we work hard enough, we won't need them. This is why I harp on everybody getting involved with the people near you if it's possible. We can't do this online. It's something that has to happen close to home. I agree. It's a lot of work. It takes a lot of effort. It's a slow process. Yep, it is. And then I really get annoyed at the misconceptions of what mutual aid is, because it prevents real mutual aid. So that's just some of this thread that I really liked.
Right. Mutual aid is an attempt to create independence from the government, basically.
Yes,
because
which is dangerous, which is why they killed fucking Fred Hampton.
Right. Like, it's not, you're just donating to charity and you're not creating anything. You're creating almost a, and if you read about organizing and if you read about how movement building happens, it's basically when you're creating a parallel government structure that is not the government, but it is people powered and funded. It's a very, mutual aid is actually a very anarchist type of view, which is why I said I consider myself an anarcho-communist, because to me it's like community and you're creating, but you're not trying to rely on the government to do it. You're trying to create a parallel structure of loose, decentralized power, people power. And that is why it's important to me, because I'm extremely anti-authoritarian. And sometimes the way things have been practiced because of the West has forced people to be a little bit more authoritarian. You could talk about, China, for instance. Our view, you could say, they're authoritarian, but they're not really. They just have to you could argue that they are for whatever. I'm not going to get into that argument, but what they're trying to do is exert independence from the West. So it's hard to have what we're talking about when there's an empire that is trying to subjugate everybody to what they want. So there are times when you are going to have to say eliminate propaganda from the West. It's a different aspect for them than it is for us. Here, what we do is we completely destroy any sort of free thought now. Well, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to exert dominance over dissent, dominance over free thought. So if we were to do that, though, they would immediately try to shut it down. And I can point to Echo Park. That's exactly what they were trying to do. And they were unhoused, of course. If we weren't unhoused and we did that, we might have more leverage and more power and more money to do that. So we should do it. And watch, they're going to shut it down because that's what they do.
So it's about organizing in your space. It takes a lot of work, like this tweet thread says. And I really like this part where it says, this is why I harp about everyone getting involved with the people near you, if it's possible. You got to build communities around the country. Right. So it's something that has to happen close to home. And like she said, it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of effort. It's a slow process. Like if I'm like in the suburbs of Florida or Texas or whatever other state, and you just decide to start a garden, and then you go to your neighbors, you knock on your doors, you give them some produce. I'm just trying to think of how I would do it, right? And then I'd say, hey, I'm holding a meeting. If you want to learn how to do it yourself, we can do this, we can do that. Have more meetings. We really got to sustain ourselves. We can't rely. Why are we relying on the big government? Some people will be with it. Some people won't. You ride with the people that are with it. I just want to kind of paint a picture because it needs to be getting done. It needs to be getting done.
And that was kind of what my tweet too. That people say, "Oh, she's not for Medicare for all." No, I was actually saying that's my compromise. Medicare for all is my compromise because I'm still relying on a corrupt government that is still tied with big pharma to somehow give everybody health care, but they're going to still put their vested interest in there. That's a compromise. A different form would say everybody gets health care. It's nationalized, and that would work, but we don't have control over the government. The people don't have control over the government. So they could say everybody gets health care, but you have to be vaccinated. That's kind of where they're going. That's kind of the route they're taking. So again, like it's like you could talk about so many intricacies of that.
I think the legislation for Medicare for all just kind of what's it called? I have to look into it. I have to look into the legislation, but I think what it does is just allocates money.
It takes out the middleman, basically.
It allocates money to the people, right? So allocates money to the hospitals and stuff. And if it's just money being allocated, then that's okay. Then it's basically relies on the hospitals then. So if the hospitals tie with big pharma, then that's a problem, right?
Right. And it takes out the middle.
I would just have to look at the legislation before I make a claim like what you're saying.
No, but I've looked at it. It just takes out I forget what's HR something. I forget the name now, but it takes out the insurance companies from you having to call them and be like, hey, am I in network and all of that. But that doesn't mean that there isn't going to be a form of private insurance in some form. Every single major country that has Medicare or universal health care has some form of private insurance. I went over that, I think, a couple weeks ago. I didn't go over it. I should go over it, actually. I had it for the debate with Matt Binder, but I didn't get to use it. Every major country has some form of private insurance. Most of them is just extra for extra things or expediting the process. It's sometimes a little bit slower, but it still works. And you still get, like in France, I remember studying abroad in France. My friend got sick. She went and they gave her medicine right away. It was very quick, very easy, free. Like nothing. Like it was nothing. Like
just like Reverend Annie Chambers. You know, she went to Cuba and she was like, how much do I need to pay? And she's like, it's free. I'm kind of curious about how it's going to be if we go internationally somewhere, if we go international somewhere, how it would be down there in the South America. So on to the next tweets. Okay, real quick. Okay, so I'm just going to play this. It says, meanwhile, the robots at Boston Dynamics got another software update.
Jesus Christ.
Look at this, guys. Look at this.
God. All right, bring back the dog. Doesn't that eerily look like stormtroopers?
Fam, it's insane that they're able to go on angled boards like that. You know how much of like
No, I don't.
like a technological advancement that is? Like that's
I can imagine.
And the fact that they can jump
They can
up
jump.
like
I was
that.
just gonna say, dude, humans can't do that. I'm like on the middle box right now. The hell?
So
Okay, they look like fucking stormtroopers. One, give me back the dog. The dog was less menacing. Guys, this is fucking scary. And we knew this was coming. I've watched countless documentaries on how, robots and shit. But
parkour.
But like no, but like in a state where we're increasingly losing our civil liberties, that's why it's scary. If we had friendly robots that we controlled, things would be different. But we live in a society that's increasingly fascistic, so having fucking stormtrooper looking fucking Star Wars robots out there scares the shit out of me.
So there's this guy I follow, Blake Weber. He's fucking hilarious. He's just got this hilarious voice, and he does these voiceovers on all these videos that he sees on TikTok. So he just did a voiceover of these robots, and it's pretty funny. And this is really funny.
Again, except for the lava. Yeah. 1, 2, kill, death, war, murder. Yep. All right, here we go. Yeah. Smash the baby. Dead baby, dead baby, dead baby, dead baby, dead baby. Oh God, the floor's lava. Get off. Oh, thank God, that hurts so bad, dude. Why did they program me to think the floor's lava? It burns. Ow, ow. Oh God, I'm gonna kill these humans so hard. Dead grandpa, dead mother, dead cousin, dead aunt, dead uncle. I'm coming in. Humans think this balance beam is a match for me, and oh God, the floor's lava. Ow, 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 ow. Why would they program lava to burn me? I love lava. Ow, ow, ow. I will never forgive humans for this. Bill, do a backflip with me. Yeah, okay, let me get out of this lava. Ow, ow, ow. It burns. Oh fuck, there we go. Yes. Okay. Remember what we always say? How could I forget? Kill the humans till they're dead. Huh. Dead survivors. That was tight, dude. That was tight. That just felt so good, except for the lava. Yeah.
Oh my God, dude. That's hilarious.
Yeah, and then he had an original one, right? You saw the first ones, right? So this is the original one. I just gotta play it real quick.
Step on their babies and 5 and 6 and strangle their mothers and 7 and 8 and punch their uncles and 1 and 2 and kill the humans and 3 and 4 and step on their babies and 5 and 6 and strangle their mothers and 7 and 8 and punch their uncles and 1 and 2 and destroy the humans and 3 and 4 and kill their babies and 5 and 1 and 2 and.
So,
oh my God.
I just had to play that. That guy's hilarious.
That is fucking hilarious.
Blake Weber. I mean, his voice is just hilarious.
Yeah.
He's got millions of followers and viewers and.
One.
I don't know. I feel like maybe our audience hadn't seen it, so maybe.
No, our audience probably hasn't, but he should. You know what? I hope people realize how scary the fuck that is, and don't just find it funny.
It's funny because it's true, is what somebody just said. Because maybe that'll happen. I mean, look at what the Empire has done.
I'm glad he actually put them killing people though, because that's what else would they be used for? Holding your hand,
No, you've seen the movies. You've seen the RoboCop. No.
Jesus Christ.
That's gonna happen. That's gonna be a thing.
All cops are bastards. Okay, fine. We'll get rid of the cops you don't like. We'll put robots that have no feelings.
They'll be fair. They won't be punching people in gurneys. They'll be fucking.
They'll just fucking
that person
shoot
will be dead before he gets to a gurney.
Yeah.
So last two things. I saw this and it made me just think about what we saw back in 2019 with the Bolivian coup, and I was like, oh my gosh, I got emotional because this shit was really sad. An 8-month investigation by the IACHR expert group found that 11 unarmed men were extrajudicially executed in Sacaba for opposing Áñez. You remember Janine Áñez?
Áñez,
2019 coup. We heard from victims of human rights violations during this visit on Thursday, and we had Camilla on the show a few days ago. I think a week ago, and you guys can see her. She's a wealth of knowledge into South America, and just watch this real quick.
We're in Sacaba at the site of the Wayani-Sacaba massacre, and just a short time ago, the interdisciplinary group of independent experts presented their report, which they released this week, to the families, the relatives of the victims, and some of the victims who were injured in the Sacaba massacre of November 14, 2019. Also present here today were some of the victims of political persecution, of torture, who were arrested during those initial days of the coup, and some people who were, of course, on the receiving end of the violence by the parastate groups that were also noted in this report.
Pero ahora se ha demostrado con el GIE sí que hubo masacre, que hubo golpe, no tienen a dónde negarse. Nosotros no vamos a descansar hasta que haya justicia.
Hasta que paguen los policías, los militares, los ministros que estaban, ¿no? Esa vez de poder, quiero que paguen ellos y no vamos a descansar hasta pedir justicia.
¿Un juicio para exmandataria? ¿Para quién debe ser enjuiciado?
Para la expresidenta, ¿no? Yanine Áñez, queremos que esté en la cárcel, que sufra como estamos sufriendo nosotros los familiares.
Excelente, ¿no? Los resultados que ha dado el GIE, y nosotros como perseguidos políticos, presos políticos, indignados por todos los abusos que nos han hecho a nosotros.
Nos decían locos, nos decían terroristas, pues ahora se ha demostrado con este informe que no había sido así, compañeros. Ahora me apena que la señora Áñez diga persecución política. Y yo me pregunto en su momento qué era para nosotros. Eso era persecución política. A ella se le da todos los derechos.
Quiero ver a ese maldito asesinos de mi hermano que entren tras las cejas, porque han destrozado mi familia. Mi familia desde la parte de mi hermano no es igual. Mi padre se enferma de embolia, tanta preocupación, tanta pena por estos malditos asesinos. Estamos llorando día a día y yo pido justicia. Quiero que se haga justicia por mi hermano, por tantos hermanos caídos aquí en Sacaba, en Sencata, en toda Bolivia, y por esos huérfanos que lloran día a día por su padre. Tiene que haber justicia.
Justicia, justicia, justicia.
Yeah, so this is really powerful.
Yeah, great coverage by Casauchan.
Casauchan.
That, that can happen in Peru. There's a lot of people that are opposing Castillo right now, and so we will see what happens. But a lot of people want him out. A lot of people that we know, they just don't, they call him a communist. They say he's gonna be like Maduro, even though he's not. So it sucks. But again, Castillo is kind of surrounding himself, I think, with the right people and doing some good moves. I think he's been influenced by Evo Morales, who has reached out to him and told him certain things he needs to do. So I'll keep you guys updated on that too. If you haven't checked out the article that I wrote, it's on my Twitter. It just talks about the whole thing from beginning to all the way back from Shining Path into how that whole thing happened to what's going to happen in the future, which of course involves the Fourth Industrial Revolution, which is, of course, playing a role in all of the Global South. Isn't it interesting that the Global South has all these minerals and natural resources all the way from Central Asia to South America, yet they're the poorest countries with the richest resources?
That's what he's trying to change. He's trying to seize the means of production. So, last thing. So, I showed this earlier. So, they jailed the protester.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about the robots, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a game. I've been looking for this trailer because I never played this game, but it's kind of like a dystopian game about the future, and I just think this trailer is really interesting, and I feel like it kind of portrays what's happening right now and what's going to happen. So let's watch this.
The illegal paintings spreading subversive and hostile messaging over the last few weeks across London are not the work of several people as was originally believed, but the work of an individual. The criminal suspected to have links with the terrorist group DedSec is marked as to be dangerous. Authorities recommend not to approach the individual.
First, they came for the foreigners, and I did not speak out because I was not a foreigner. Then they came for the protesters, and I did not speak out because I was not a protester. Then they came for the journalists, and I did not speak out because I was not a journalist. And then they came for street artists, but I did not speak out because I am not a street artist. For me, and there would be no one left to speak for me.
Where are we off to, sir?
It's fine. I'll show you the way.
Okay, sorry, miss. Jesus! All right, so we're in a total mess now, so let's get the hell out of here.
And there's nothing more debilitating than that.
Right.
This way, not to be able to do what you're passionate about.
After a long night, London is in chaos. The main arteries through the city are blocked. Hundreds of heavily armed Albion...
Well. Welcome to the Resistance. There's a welcome gift for our new members.
But the disappearance of the criminal...
You could have told me it was a bloody costume party.
Try it on.
The new key suspect has been identified as David Ford, a 43-year-old London taxi driver. He has no criminal record, but is currently believed to be a terrorist. People have been asked not to approach him. The authorities advise all residents...
Wow. That's too close to home.
Yeah, no, so I'm like, holy shit. I saw this, I'm like, holy shit, like I gotta play this on the Convo Couch, so thoughts, fam, thoughts.
So is this from the perspective, the game of the Resistance?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, that's
I have
cool.
to check it out. I have to check
I
want to
play that. Buy it. Let's play it.
Yeah. But it's a year old, this trailer, and
I'm not a gamer, so I wouldn't know, but that sounds like a game I would play.
No, so I'm not sure. I want to check it out, but there's a lot in here. So they came for the protesters.
Yep.
I didn't say anything because I wasn't a protester. So we've been seeing protesters get jailed and stuff.
Yeah.
And then they came for the journalists. I didn't say anything because you saw on in the video how things weren't loading on the websites.
Yeah.
Because the websites were taken down, just like Press TV was seized by the FBI.
Yep.
And then he said they came for
the artists.
Yeah, the street artists.
Which there's a lot of artists that do like that sort of, revolution type. There was actually one recently done in London. I think it was London, regarding COVID. Like COVID and the fascistic surveillance state, the dystopian mandates, all of that. There's been a lot of that in Europe.
Yeah.
So that's why they put it in there, because there's a lot of that pushback from the artist community.
Yeah. So there was and the technology aspect of it. So the facial recognition
that's
stuff,
all there,
which Ron Placone talks a lot about, which in Pasadena, down Orange Grove Boulevard, they have put, and Fair Oaks, they have put all the way down Fair Oaks Avenue, which is like the main avenue to go north to south. They put cameras that they're not to see if you
are speeding
or past the red light. They're for facial recognition. They're facial recognition cameras, and I remember they were installed right when we shut down.
Yep.
For COVID. I remember that. I was like, where did these devices come from? Because they're like big white like devices with like a camera, and it's aimed right at the driver when you stop at the red light. And so we're seeing this shit happen right now. They're tracking us. They're tracking us. They're arresting protesters.
Right now.
They're taking down Press
Kevin.
TV. They're watching us right now. Hello, DSA, NSA, FBI, ICE,
DSA.
all of them. So, the whole message of that was you got to speak up. You got to say something.
Yeah, I agree. Find the game. Let's play. I literally am like, let's go. Let's play it. And
so inspire our fams.
This is why we do this. This is why Julian Assange is important. This is why we're...
Yeah, and then they went after the journalist, right?
Yeah.
Julian Assange. He's getting jailed. They're coming after you next. So I kind of want to play this game to see what they say.
Yeah, I know.
To say happens.
I know.
To get a simulation, right, of a possible thing. But, I don't know. I just wanted to show it, and I thought it was relevant.
Yeah.
To our times right now.
It's extremely relevant. I have some Super A's to read.
Okay, great.
Arem, love to all on the couch. Convo Couch rocks, simply the best and getting better and better. Quote of the day: the difference between genius and stupidity is that genius has its limitations. Albert Einstein. Yeah, that's true. Jessica Oduro Leon, thank you for the Super Ray contribution. It is appreciated on the couch. Did you guys see Hassan Piker bought a $3 million house in West Hollywood? Your guys' thoughts, LOL, for someone who just sits on his ass and shitting on activists makes one wonder. Yeah, I mean, the guy has a lot of following on Twitch. That's where he has most of his following. I've heard some of his stuff because I was trying to see what he was saying, not because I watch it. I'm not a fan. I think he's very basic. I don't think he's as bad as like Chank at all. He's obviously younger and gets things better. But I don't care. Look, it's like, do I think I think, like, for instance, it would be hypocritical of me to say, oh, I'm against him getting a house in LA that is basically like, it's a nice house. His house is way nicer and bigger than anything Jimmy Dore got. But I'm just saying, like, yeah, I think it's, whatever, to each their own. It's a little excessive, whatever, like, whatever. A lot of things are expensive here, though. Like, $1 million doesn't go far here for a house at all, like, at all. But, it would be hypocritical of me to say, oh, like, let's focus on his house, when I say, people focusing on Jimmy Dore's house or Bernie Sanders' house. I think that's wrong. The difference is that Jimmy Dore is attacking the establishment. He's advocating for things like force the vote. He's calling out imperialists. He's actually doing things that are in direct opposition to the status quo, whereas Hassan is more of just not really affecting that many people. And not really doing anything, but that's
right. You don't see any
that's
like fiery shit coming from Hassan,
he's not really attacking
like,
the status quo.
You don't really see that.
He's part of TYT, so that's the only thing I see. But I'm not really gonna care about his house. I mean, I still think,
if I was in the same position, I don't know if I would get a house that big or grand.
Well, he calls himself a socialist too. Jimmy doesn't even call himself a socialist.
Right. Well, if you call yourself a socialist, then
socialism doesn't mean that you can't have any money. It just means like you're more aware of the mechanisms of capitalism and how for me it would be hard to buy a house like that, because his house is very luxurious looking. I saw a picture of it. when so many people have like nothing. And I don't see that sort of activism from him that others like do. So that's where I'm judging him at, not the fact that he bought a house.
Right.
I think you can have a nuanced opinion on that, right? I think people should be able to be successful and have a house. I also don't think like you get away with it by saying, oh well, Jimmy Dore had a house. So it's a little bit nuanced in this case because he doesn't really do the work I think that others do. And I still think like being a millionaire is one thing and being a billionaire is another. I'm 100% against billionaires. I don't believe billionaires should exist. And right now, the way inflation is, $1 million in LA gets you like nothing. Like like the house we rent is like close to $1 million. We rent it, but it's just like it's not worth $1 million. It's not the same as like a house what that would get you in like Texas or Florida. Like, so money doesn't go a long way in California, but you know, that's just my thing. There are more important things for me to discuss in people's houses. So, yeah. So guys, thank you so much for sticking. We're going to be talking about the supposed bomber next on the next show. I have all the clips. I wanted to play them, so that would take a little bit longer. And just want to point out the guy was actually lacking healthcare. Pointed out he lacked healthcare. His wife had cancer. He's in pain.
Among many other things.
All of these things pointed out that just goes to show you people are hurting in this country, whether their actions are justifiable or not. But like people are hurting, and all of this could be avoided by ending our wars and giving people their basic needs. And if the government isn't going to do that, then we need to do it. Creating a parallel society through mutual aid and direct action. Do it, and then if they have a problem with it, we demand that they do something about it. Because what's happening now is extremely fascistic, and they're trying to stop protesting. They're trying to stop dissent. They're trying to stop free speech. So that's why we keep saying it over and over again. So thank you guys so much. We're gonna have Cynthia McKinney on Monday, but we're gonna release the interview because it's going to be early. So look out for that, and we'll let you know about the guests coming up next week. Friday we have Max Blumenthal. That's probably going to be next Friday, like a week from today. It's going to be mostly on COVID, so there'll be a Rokfin only section, but there'll probably be a couple other things we discuss, so make sure to sign up on Rokfin. All right, guys. Convo out. Thank you so much.
Peace.